Sadly, this browser doesn't support except when I go to my own Facebook, it'll be right where it's supposed to be. Yep. Come on now. Ugh. It's all fighting with me.
Yellow shield
Oh.
already.
It's all fighting with me.
Are you on wireless?
Yep.
Oh, that's why.
Well, if I have to connect halfway through,
You should just connect.
oh, you know what, George?
I know you don't have time. Oh, it's 6:01. Oh,
Well, we really don't have time. Um,
you got to
think,
make a,
think.
I have to come there and make a more permanent connection there. We got to put it through the wall, get a thing, plug it in, it's done. Instead of trying to run it up the stairs. We just need to move to a house. There you go.
Well, that would be lovely.
I'm in
Oh,
Stroudsburg, so I could just walk to your house and George, I have a problem. Okay, no problem.
that would be great. Afford it. Yeah, we're going to be a little late here. I'm going to do as many as I can do before I get stopped.
Tom Bruno entering the waiting room. I'm going to admit
Your
him.
co-hosts, go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh, God, I'm getting a headache. Why would I be getting a headache? 8. Oh, crap, the sound. Oh, okay. Hey, Tom.
Hey, how you doing, Jeff?
We're just a we're just slightly behind. This is the exceptionally exciting pre-show part of the program where I do all the sharing. So George, either none of this is getting shared.
I'll check it.
Where there's some kind of problem.
Probably because you don't have enough bandwidth. Let's find out here.
So I haven't been blocked yet, and I should have been. I usually get.
You're live on YouTube.
I am because I couldn't get that to open either.
No, that's open. You're live on YouTube. Let's check out Facebook. Let's fetch it a book. You are live on Facebook. Where else do you go to? You go to Twitter?
No, it's the groups.
Oh, the groups.
I got a feeling something's wrong because I seem to be not having a problem. I don't seem to have been. I mean, hooray, but it's strange.
Not strange to me. You're on wireless.
No, I usually get
You're gonna kill me, I know, but
I usually get some kind of confirmation that I've actually shared to these places, and I'm not being blocked yet. It just keeps saying posted. I'm waiting for the shoe to fall here, and it's not, which is very strange. It's done, I think. Interesting. Weird. I don't think I got blocked. That's very, very strange.
No news is good news.
It's too right. Page. Post. Share. Page. Oh, I could not post the page. Now it's stopping me. Okay. Okay. Well, of course. We only create it. They own it. Ill. Okay, folks, we're a little late. What do you say? What do you say we do this thing, eh? Hey, Gambit in the house. Thank you. What do you say we do this thing, shall we? Look at that background. Tom, the guest is not allowed to have a better background than the host. Not fair.
Sorry.
Nah, you got us all beat. All right, hang on. And we will go in 3, 2.
Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through, but not so doggone seasoned that he won't try something new? A man who's old enough to know. To you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight? So that he will fight for his right. A loyal man who brings a job a fresh new point of view. Well, it's up to you. It's up to you. It's strictly up to you. And do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president, no matter what his creed? It's to which we must be true. Well, it's up to you. It's up to you. It's strictly up to you. Do you like a man who answers straight, a man who's always fair? Who'll measure him against the others, and when you compare, you cast your vote for Kennedy and the change that's over too. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you.
Welcome, welcome, welcome from my humble second bedroom here in the Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, part of these United States, North American continent, Western Hemisphere, on this planet Earth. The only one we have. Third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system, part of the Milky Way galaxy. This is the Kennedy Effect live with you for the 23rd of June, 2024. Welcome home, everybody. It has been a very, very, it's been a hell of a schedule for the last probably 2 months, really, between Mother's Day, Father's Day, Memorial Day, travel, work schedules. It's been a very, very choppy broadcast schedule to be with you, and that's not a good thing in this lovely industry of ours, to not be with you on a regular basis. But we are here now, and we are very glad that you are as well. Let's get through the business end of the program, shall we? Welcome, welcome, welcome for everybody across the Facebook universe, and you all know my love-hate relationship with Facebook, and it is my love-hate relationship with them is that they love to hate me. Anybody? Bueller? I'll be here all night. Try the meatloaf. We have shared the program, oddly enough, to second 104 places, which means that somewhere along the way, when I was sharing, I got stopped without any sort of notification. So I have no idea what groups I made it to and what groups I didn't. Bottom line is, though, that to every single group, every individual, every small group, large group, local, regional, national, global, regardless of whether it's based in politics or radio, we've joined so many new and made so many new Facebook friends across the podcasting and radio networks and groups that support them and promote them, which has been a great pleasure. Thank you for allowing us to be part of your piece of the Facebook universe. I know Facebook owns it all, but if you created it, in my mind, it's yours. So thanks for allowing us to be part of it. We appreciate it very, very much. You can come to my personal Facebook page, Jeff Kennedy. It's right there in the square. I'm pointing to the squares if you all know what the hell I'm pointing at. This thing with Zoom, there's something about, I feel like I'm talking to somebody else. I actually look myself in the face. I've never stared at myself so much in my life as when I do this program. And I'm pointing to the square as if it was a person and as if you knew what I was talking about. But that said, my name's right there. Come to my personal Facebook page, watch the program, join us, comment, questions, agree, disagree, yell, scream, whatever it is, you can do that right there. We are also live on our home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information. I will do my best to keep up with the comments and questions coming at us from different groups. And again, we've shared to about 104 different places. I'll do my very, very best to keep up with your comments and questions if you are anywhere else other than at my Facebook or in the group Facebook. And for all the groups that have allowed us to share, thank you. You can stay right there and continue to watch, or you can come on over, whatever's easier for you. We are also live right now on our YouTube channel, which is also called That Other Side of Information. It's also the best place to catch up with the program if you've missed any of it. If you join us midstream, or which I guess if you're live streaming midstream is actually a very apropos topic, isn't it? Or apropos word to use, isn't it? You can join us. If you join us midstream, you can catch up with everything on our YouTube channel. As soon as we sign off, the show stays on YouTube in a recorded form. You can start right from the beginning and work yourself all the way through throughout the week. And the number of people who actually do that is growing exponentially, to be honest with you. People who take it in smaller bits across, a 5-day work week. We are on the TCP Media Group, of course, sharing our program there. And of course, hot101.net. Our name is our web address, the originators, keystones, foundational stones of global internet radio, hot101.net. If you are not listening to it, you should be, and not just because I'm there, but because you should be listening to it, because it's great. And there are great talented people there who deserve for you to give them a bit of a listen. Hot101.net, our name is our web address. If you can connect to the internet anywhere below, on, or above planet Earth, you can listen to hot101.net and on any type of device, desktop, laptop, tablet, phone, Bluetooth it to speakers, earbuds. You can Bluetooth it in the car. And of course, you can tell Alexa to play hot101.net, and you should be doing exactly that. That is it for us, for the business part of the program. Thank you for being patient with us and for sticking with us through this very strange schedule. I have other announcements to make regarding the program. We will get to them later because we actually have a guest. I reached out. Think of how amazing this is. If it wasn't 100 degrees here in the Lehigh Valley this past week, I'd swear it was going to snow, because I actually reached out to a potential guest. And are you all sitting down? I'm glad that I am. They answered me. Wow. Or even better, they said, of course we'll come on, and then actually showed up. shot to all of the other folks who said, of course we'll show up, and then never do, or disappeared, or the ones who just flat out never answer, including some significant elected officials in our backyard. Wink, wink, wink. That said, our guest is a new friend of the program, friend of mine for years, whether he knows it or not, is Tom Bruno. Tom is the chairman of the board of trustees for the New Jersey Public Employees Retirement Fund. And among the things that we'll be discussing throughout the program is that, obviously, we're actually going to try to explain to some of you who never heard of such a thing what a pension actually is. Pensions used to be very matter of fact. They were very normal. If you had a job, you got a pension. And then came Reagan. I've told you before on my tombstone, it will say it all started with Reagan. Well, I should say that's kind of true. So much of it ended with Reagan, or everything changed there. I remember President Obama getting an awful lot of flack when he was running for president, saying that he wanted to be a transformational president like Reagan. And of course, he got a lot of crap for that because Reagan destroyed a lot of things in this country, and the policies that began there continue to destroy what's a lot about the fabric of this country. You can draw a very straight line from the Powell memo to Nixon's Southern Strat. Well, actually, I would say from McCarthy to the Powell memo to Nixon's Southern strategy, straight through to Trump. And the biggest, perhaps the widest part of that highway is Reaganism. And so we'll talk about the union movement. We'll talk politics. We'll talk about pensions. We'll even tell you, like I said, we'll even tell you what a pension is. I went with the Bethlehem Steel t-shirt today because we're going to be talking about unions and industry and things that, were the backbone of this country since the late 1800s. That said, let us welcome our guest, Tom Bruno. Tom, welcome to the program. And you are still muted, at least on my end. There it is. So welcome to the program.
Yep, thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Let me start with the same question that we start with for all new guests. Who is Tom Bruno and how did you get here?
Well, I got here from an invite from you, but well, let's see. I'm a former union leader. I was a president of my local branch of 500 CWA members. I'm retired. I am elected to the New Jersey Public Employees, the trustees, the board of trustees for the Public Employees Retirement System. I am a political activist and have been a strategist for the Democratic Party for both the county here and the city here in Easton. And when I was a political director for a statewide local in New Jersey, I was involved in federal and state races, and in fact, worked on campaigns for Governor McGreevey, Governor John Corzine, worked on transition teams for both, outlined cost savings for them so that they did not have to raise taxes or lay off public workers, which was my goal. So I'm an author of a couple books, mostly union related. But I think, pretty much that sums it up. I've got a lot under my hat. So go ahead.
And it's why I wanted to ask you to be here, because you do have so much under your hat. But as someone myself who spent half my life, well, more than half my life, 2/3 of it really, in New Jersey, and being born in Phillipsburg and then spending about half of it in the eastern half in the New York market, but in New Jersey, the northeastern New Jersey. This is not something that I was originally going to ask you about, but it literally just popped in my head because it's something that I talk about here a lot. And even though we're very blessed, the program literally goes around the globe, and we know that we have listeners around the globe. This is a very regional question, but I wanted to, it just popped into my brain, so I wanted to ask you about it. Pennsylvania is a very, very unique state, right? For as large as it does very much feel like two states. I think once you get past the halfway point, it tends to identify with Ohio. The eastern half tends to somewhat identify with New Jersey. And I have said on this program, I don't even know how many times, countless times, that Pennsylvania could learn a hell of a lot from New Jersey in the way that it does things and runs things. Governor Murphy's an extremely progressive governor. I think he's one of the more underrated governors in this country, and has been throughout his time. The effort to power New Jersey through offshore wind alone is as progressive as it comes. Calling a Democratic majority legislature into session to raise taxes on corporations and the top 1% is about as progressive as it comes. The fact that the state still runs the unemployment system and workman's compensation systems and things like that, where it is all and collects its own taxes. Oh, what a amazing thought. We collect our own taxes in New Jersey instead of privatizing all of those things the way they have been in Pennsylvania, so that the private companies take a chunk off the top. It's almost like the whole Commonwealth is run like a health insurance company. The object is to bring in the money and never disperse it back out and just stick it in our pockets. So I wasn't planning on this question, and I hope you'll forgive me if you think it's coming out of left field, but just how much could Pennsylvania learn from New Jersey?
Well, I think you summed it up already. There is quite a bit. I will tell you this, when you talk about Governor Murphy, here's a guy that entered into his role as governor with a pension system that had been underfunded for 25 years. Not just underfunded, but not funded, period. Right.
In fact, borrowed, quote unquote, borrowed
right.
from.
It started with Governor Whitman. She borrowed about $2 billion from it. What she did is just said, well, it's doing so well, we're not going to make our payments to it because they can live off the profits they're making, off the interest that they're gaining, right? Which is sounds like a good idea, except pensions run on the notion that you get these great years and then you get these years when you drop. And it's the great years that cover the years when you drop, right?
Like any investment, by the way.
Right, correct. So when she started skimming off the top and not putting the money in, it created a problem. We went to the IRS with the problem. The IRS then sent her a letter saying, that she would lose tax exempt status for the fund if she didn't put the money back. So myself and another fella, Fran Fiore from CWA, both of us met her in Washington, D.C. when she was giving a speech to John Birch Society. And we waited outside her room that she had, and that she was having this luncheon with these people. And when she came out, she thought we were there with a contingency of union members ready to protest, but because she recognized us, but we weren't. So instead, we went down to the bar and discussed a pension bill that she could float to repay the pension, basically as a bond initiative, which is what she did do, and which put some of the money back in. The problem is she didn't keep paying payments, never made payments to the system, and every governor and every legislator after that followed suit. And we wound up with
of both parties, it should be said to be.
Oh yeah, both parties, absolutely. And so McGreevey was the first guy to put in some money, but what he did is he took it from there was a special fund created when they changed the formula of the pension to make it more lucrative for retirees, but they made it retroactive, which was a problem because the money was never taken out of people's paychecks to cover that funding level for a benefit level. And so that exacerbated the unfunded liability. So the special use fund that was created to help offset that, he borrowed money from that to make payments towards the unfunded liability, which just kicked the can down the road a little bit. But that was the only money that went in. And then, of course, we got to Chris Christie, who reduced the benefits drastically. We wound up losing about 45%, making the pension ranked 95th out of the top 100 in the country in terms of generosity or lucrativeness. But at least we still have the pension. And it's not a bad pension, don't get me wrong, but it certainly is not the one we signed up for when we signed up for it. In any case, so that brought us there. Now, what could Pennsylvania learn? Pennsylvania, and you might have to correct me on this because I'm not overly familiar with their pension system, but the last time I looked at it, which admittedly was a couple of years ago, they rely on your salary, but they include overtime, or at least they did. They included, if you worked overtime, they included that as part of your salary. New Jersey does not. They base it on your base salary, which is smarter because, frankly, you don't know how much overtime somebody's going to work. So how do you fund for that? Right? That's a liability that you can't possibly predict. Whereas a step system in New Jersey, your salary is say $50,000 this year, but every year you get a $1,400 raise or a $1,500 raise, right? Which is built into the system in a step system. And then, of course, you're across the boards that are negotiated every 4 years or 3 years. Those things you can anticipate, and you can adjust your contributions accordingly. Pennsylvania, as I understood it at the time, did not do that. They used their overtime, which can be a problem because you don't really know how much a person's going to work overtime or if they're going to work it at all. So you can't really work that into a formula. So I think that's one of the main things you could learn from New Jersey. However, look, there's a host of things. Privatization, number one. I worked anti-privatization strategies, and I was actually used all over the country for that.
That's the one that gets me. That's the one that I think that Pennsylvania, and I think that and I was not living here then, so I cannot profess, I would never profess to be an expert on it, but it was really during the Corbett administration when the privatization efforts went wild. They deliberately, reduced the size of the unemployment bureau department here so that it simply didn't function to a point where that when people were out of work, they couldn't access it, or they just would give up and not bother to try to access it. So of course, then the money doesn't go out. And of course, this all goes back to the baseline is that rich people don't want to pay taxes. But the privatization is the one that gets me, is that nowhere when government privatizes anything does it save money. Eventually, even if there is short-term cost savings, eventually that cost will be more than if the government did it itself, because of course there's no profit motive in government. My local municipality, our county, and the Commonwealth does not even collect its own taxes. Keystone something private equity something collects the taxes, and they get paid to do it. When in New Jersey, the government does it. When I needed to access unemployment here in Pennsylvania, I had to call our local state representative for help because the Bureau wouldn't talk to me and wouldn't help me at all because they literally didn't have enough people to do it. In New Jersey, the government runs it. The state government runs it. I applied for it online because I was still working in New Jersey at the time when the pandemic hit. It was done in 5 minutes. The first check came the following Monday. When I needed to access workman's compensation for spinal injury in New Jersey, I did it online. It was a 3-step process. The doctor did one, I did one, and I think it was the company did one. We all did it online. It was done within a few minutes. The checks came uninterrupted. Here in PA, it's privately run. Each employer hires a company to do it, and they just deny you. Doesn't matter if you're paraplegic, they'll deny you because it's like healthcare. Bring in the premiums, never spend the money, put the money in your pocket. The privatization effort for schools in Pennsylvania compared to New Jersey is staggering. It's that privatization. Obviously, your expertise is not limited to pensions. It's just what you deal with on a daily basis. But it would seem to me that privatization effort is the largest difference between Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And it's exactly, and it seems to me that once you privatize something, it's very, very difficult to I'm not even sure what the word re-governmentalize. I think it may have just created a word there, but
Deprivatized.
to unprivatize it
Right.
or if it was national government, I would say to nationalize it again. It's that privatization efforts between these two states that are right next to each other that I find staggering. Is it
Well,
what you do you agree, disagree? You think I'm way
Oh, no, I
field here,
agree.
or-
Let me just, I give you an example.
Notice he said left field, the progressive.
Yeah, no, this is actually right in my wheelhouse because the International CWA Union used me all over the country to help with anti-privatization strategies because I was very successful against Whitman, who tried to privatize our state services 17 different times, and I beat her every 17 times. So every one of those 17.
And she's considered a moderate now, by the way.
Yes.
That
And
woman,
when we-
that woman would not know Dwight Eisenhower if he fell on top of her. She is not an Eisenhower Republican as much as she'd like to tell you that she.
well, that's
But
true.
even she is not welcome in this current
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Trump Republican Party, or not
That's
even
true.
party, really, corporation. But
I'll give
that
you a
said,
story. I'll give you a quick story. We the local I was with represented the institutional workers and correctional workers, and not the guards and not the officers, but the actual the civilian staff. And she wanted to privatize the healthcare. Now, this is before I was brought on board. So she privatized the healthcare, and it was costing them at the time $66 million a year. And when I got on board, I said, well, we could probably reduce that by at least 12 million. So we put together a proposal and we answered the bid, saving the state $12 million on 66 million. So she turned that down and awarded the bid to CMS, Correctional Medical Services. And that bid, she gave them our recommendations for how to save the money. They implemented the $12 million in savings, and they wound up charging the state. By the time it was all done with all their, their contract modifications that they came up with throughout, the 2 years that they were in business, or 3 years they were in business, they came up and it was $425 million by the time it was done. Okay. McGreevy came in and he unprivatized it and brought it back into state service. So we eventually won that one, but all the others we stopped it at the pass. And basically, I forged relationships with businesses that stood to lose money, the smaller businesses, and they formed coalitions around my recommendations, and then went to Governor Whitman and pretty much beat her up. So we didn't even have to get involved, other than the initial, striking a match, lighting the fire, and then backing away.
I'm sure she never received a dime in campaign cash from CMS. I'm sure. I'm just speculating there a little bit, but I'm a little bit late I was a little bit late getting on. George and I had a little bit of computer was just running a tiny bit slow. We were a little bit late getting on, and geez, now the whole thing is just a little bit late. So I'm a little bit late to reset the show. It's 6:34 Eastern time here on the Kennedy Effect live with you for the 23rd of June, 2024. We've shared the program to 104, I think it is, different places across Facebook before we were stopped yet again, as we are every week, to every group, large, small, local, regional, statewide, national, international, that allows us to be part of your corner of the Facebook universe. Thank you very, very much. We could not do it without you. Watch, stay right where you are in any of these groups. Continue to take it in. I will do my best to monitor the comments that might be coming in from these other sources, or you can come directly to my Facebook page, Jeff Kennedy, and our home group Facebook page for anything that has to do with for everything surrounding this program, that other side of information. We will take your comments, questions. You can be part of this discussion. NPR is a lovely, lovely thing, but they get lecture-y. I don't want to be lecture-y. That's why we try to have guests. You could only hear so much of me before it really starts to give you a migraine. Put your comments and questions in the chat or in the comments section. If you have a question, I will read it. I will present it to the guest. We will take your questions. We will also open up the phone line later in the program. TCP Media Group, we are live there as well. And of course, hot101.net, our name is our web address. If you can stream and connect to the internet anywhere on the planet, below it or above it, you can listen to hot101.net 24/7, every type of device you can think of. And you can also Bluetooth it to anything that is capable of being Bluetooth to. I think the really underrated one is in the car. Bluetooth it in the car and listen while you're commuting, driving, taking your summer cruises, wherever it might be. And of course, you can tell Alexa to play hot101.net. So again, we will open up the phone line later in the program. Come to my Facebook page or our group Facebook page and give us your comments and questions. And of course, we're live on YouTube right now as well, also called That Other Side of Information. I can take I'm actually watching both right here, and I can take your comments and questions as we go. So let's get back, after I derailed you there for the first half hour, let me get back to some of the basics, like really, really, really basic things that probably most people already know, but let's just build up from the bottom. I think most people know what a union is and what a union environment is and what a union does, or at least tries to do. Collective bargaining represent, it's democracy in the workplace. A large number of people come together and collectively bargain as a unit, making themselves more valuable to the company and making their bargaining position stronger. We can all name unions like the Teamsters and the pipe fitters and steam fitters and the electricians, and we can all name unions. But something that seems to have died outside of the government sector, outside of the public sector, in the private sector, which seems to have all but disappeared, and with a lot of help from government, by the way, is the pension. What is a pension? How is it different from what most people would be used to seeing now, which would be some type of 401k or something like that? A creation of the Reagan administration, by the way. There was no such thing as a 401k until then. But what's the difference between an actual pension and what most people would probably be used to today, a 401k?
Well, first of all, a 401k is what they call a defined contribution plan, meaning the amount of money you put in is defined. That's a standard. That's a set, amount, and it stays the same. And sometimes you have employers that will contribute a matching fund to that, and sometimes you won't. But the employee, in a defined contribution, the employee has the responsibility of contributing the money and investing that money. They have to pick where they want that money to go to be invested. They can choose an aggressive high risk plan or a moderate plan that has some risk and some safety, or they can go with a safe plan, but that has a lower investment portfolio, but it's safer, of course. And so it really depends on how long you're going to be in that particular program. If you're getting up there in age, you probably want to do something more aggressively, but then you run the risk of losing it all. So you may not, that may not be for you, but if you're trying to get a big bang for your buck, the only way to do that is aggressively. Otherwise, it's going to be a slow and steady thing, and you're not going to see a lot of gain. The problem with that is, as it turns out, people's retirement is not secure. At the end of the day, it relies on the stock market, basically, right, or whatever you put into it, right? So if you put it in a safe fund and the treasury bills, notes, and stuff are coming in at a low point, which they were for a long time there, you're not going to make any money at all. On the other hand, a 401k in a market like today is probably going to explode, right? But everything comes to an end. We're not always going to be in a bull market. We're not always going to see these record highs. There's, in fact, we're pretty much due for a drop pretty quick. So I'd say probably within the next, if not this year, then maybe next year or the following year. It's going to happen sooner than later. Let me put it that way. Having said that, I'll go to the other, what used to be called a pension, is what they call a defined benefit plan. Defined benefit plan is one where the employer puts the money in, the employee puts nothing in, the employer puts it in, and they invest that money for the employee. And at the end of your career, you have a set formula. You know exactly how much you're going to get, whether the stock market is doing great or whether the stock market crashed. It doesn't matter. That money is set because it's based on a formula that uses your years of service, your age, and your salary as its basis. So, and that's basically what a pension is. Now, private sector is probably closer to, I think they're down to 10% now.
What's only about 4.7% of the private sector is unionized.
Um,
It was as high as 37.6 when Reagan came to office. I think it's under 5% now. And I couldn't tell you how many of that 5% actually have a pension. But it probably have the 401k, which from my point of view, and you can please tell me if I'm wrong, but from my point of view, really is just a way to it's a way to shove more money to Wall Street for them to play with and gamble. It's a way, and it weakens unions.
okay, so here's what I'm going to tell you. Basically, that the BLS, which is where I get my information from typically, is just started looking at union membership since 1983, right after the Patco garbage from Reagan, where it fired 12,000 traffic controllers, right? Plus or minus 1,000. Nobody knows the actual number, but it was around 12,000.
After Reagan went to their national convention and asked them for the support and their endorsement for president, and said that he would support them, right? And then they were dumb enough to do it, right? And then that he would support them and back their union, and fully fund their pensions and hire the traffic controllers, the next generation of traffic controllers. And then, of course, his first major action in office was to fire all of them when they went on strike.
Right. And so the next thing he did is he had BLS monitor union strength from 1983 forward, because he wanted to see whether or not his action was having a chilling effect on unionization, which of course it did. So in Pennsylvania, for example, 60 years ago, unionization was 37.7%. New Jersey was 39.4%. By 1980, there was a slight drop. There was 32.2 in Pennsy and 30.8 in Jersey. But after 8 years of Reaganomics and his trickle-down misery, the anti-union policies and appointments to the National Labor Relations Board, union density fell to 21.2 in Pennsy and 24% respectively. And, so, and by 2014, that became 12.7 in Pennsylvania and 16.5 in New Jersey. And that's total. I can break it down into private sector versus public sector, but public sector tends to be about 5 times greater than the private sector in terms of unionization. Now, I'm getting into unionization because the two are interconnected. Okay. And I don't want to get too far into the weeds on union density because I really don't think the way we look at union density, if you look at all the data, everybody counts union density basically as a model that quantifies the share of union members in all gainfully employed persons, right? But that's frankly, it's a little narrow and biased. It lacks specificity or comparability because take, for example, the All China Federation of Trade Unions. They claim they have 184% membership rate. Well, how do you have 184% membership rate? Okay. Clearly, they're including people that are not actively employed, right? And so that renders comparability or comparability absolutely futile, right?
We like to say, especially like in sports, that we're giving 110%.
Right.
But mathematically speaking, scientifically speaking, you cannot give more than 100%. 100%, of course, encompassing all
right.
of whatever. You simply cannot give, if you have one apple and you eat all of it, you ate 100% of it. You can't eat 110% of it because that's all there is 100%.
Exactly.
So we like to use that as a euphemism. So when Tom says they're saying that they have 184% membership, it's simply mathematically impossible. That simply can't be the case.
Correct. So now you take a look at France, and they have an 8% labor union density by traditional standards, but they are typically viewed as exceptionally strong and relevant politically and in advocacy for their members' interests, right?
The yellow vest marches.
Exactly. So you have so the union density, I think, is probably the wrong metric we should be using. Because I think even though we only have 6% union density in this country in private sector and 32% or 30 something 31% in public sector, I think the bottom line is that they wield an awful lot of power, even for being as small as they are, comparatively. Right? So
and seemingly growing as well. There seems to be a rebirth, if you will, of the union movement. We've seen union victories by the United Auto Workers against Stellantis, which is, Americans would normally know it as Chrysler, and GM recently. Ford happened to settle with them before they ever went on strike. We've seen an Amazon warehouse in Staten Island form a union, the only Amazon union in the country, although many more votes are scheduled. We had UPS and its union avoided a very major strike, which would have crippled really package movement in this country. There's only 3 real entities that move packages in this country anymore: UPS, FedEx, and the United States Postal Service. That would have, effectively frozen a third of the market. They settled before. And I think you're seeing, we've seen a rebirth of union apprenticeship programs for trades. So there does seem to be a bit of a rebirth, if you will, of the union movement, and it's heartening to me because you have workers who have never known a deeply unionized country. They're post-Reagan individuals. They've only grown up in a country knowing Reaganomics and the myth of trickle down, and yet they have come to this realization that unions are good things for them. I find that very, very heartening. But yeah,
I would agree. And not only that, but at the same time now with this union drop, and then the recent resurgence, a little bit. It's small, but it's nice to see it happening, frankly. Because there's advantages to union membership, but at the same time, I just want to get back. The reason I was going into the union piece of this is because it intertwines inexorably, frankly, with the drop in defined benefit. programs. So at the same time as Reagan had pretty much killed unions, not really, but
It went to war against them, and sure as
yeah,
hell
he did.
yeah, he damn near did
Yes.
kill all of them, and he went to war against them.
That's true. But at the same time that happened, he had he implemented the ERDA, the Tax Act, back in 81. It was the largest tax break in American history, the largest to this day. When taken into account, the inflation. But yeah, so it's still that. That forced a double dip in the recession that we had just come out of. So we went back into a recession. So the following year, he came out with the largest tax increase in American history, which was the TEFRA Act. Right. So and that gave favored status to SCPs. And it's a simplified employee pension. So and that kind of opened the door. There were 401ks already from I want to say 1978 or 79 is when the legislation went in for them, but they didn't take off until Reagan. And so SCPs and the 401ks really got favored status. SCPs more so. So that's what happened there, and you saw a drastic drop. You had American private sector workers in 1975, had about a third of them, these are non-union now. About a third of non-union private sector had a DBP in 1975. But overall, 71% participated in defined benefits in 1975. That's the overall number. But non-union enjoyed just a third of it. That fell in 1987 to 28% overall, and also for them. But it now stands at, well, 10%. It was 10%. I know you mentioned the 4% or something. I have the BLS report on March 2022 had it at 7% for non-union private sector. So that's where we were at it in 2022. I did not look at the latest numbers, but frankly, they've been dropping. However, there's been a recent resurgence in that as well. IBM, for example, just came out recently with they unfroze their defined benefit program. And they are instituting a cash balance type pension, which is a defined benefit style pension, but it has some nuances to it. All right. They save let me just get.
Well, you muted yourself there. No worries, it happens. I do it too.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I hit
No problem.
So I have.
So George put up in the chat that for IBM, they are funding 5% of an employee's salary, for which the employee will receive a 6% return for the first 3 years. Then the yield on 10-year treasuries with a floor of 3% until 2034. Then the yield on 10-year treasuries with no floor thereafter. Sounds like
correct.
a lot of.
That's correct.
Sounds like a different language. There's a lot of math in there.
There is a lot of math. That is, so a cash balance, it's a hybrid retirement plan, but at least it's a DPM. They have a floor that they know they're going to get, as opposed to a 401k, which is up in the air. It's anybody's guess, right? as the
Union,
people from Lehman and AIG found out during the
Yeah.
crash.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Union, well, and I think that's, to be honest with you, I think that's partly why Americans kind of reveled in that so much. I know that some very real regular Americans lost their livelihoods when those two investment houses went down. But for the upper management, who were just raking in the fees and the commissions and the profits on nothing and money created out of thin air and
Nobody went to jail.
and moving numbers on a spreadsheet, I think that's why Americans were really not so heartbroken to see them go out of business. And oh, by the way, isn't that supposedly a free market, that when you can't run your business, you go out of business, and that your competition scoops you? Yeah, and you're right, and no one went to jail. And during that big crash, let's not forget, by the way, that Iceland was the only country who put the bankers in jail. And they did. They sued them. Well, I shouldn't say they sued them. They charged them with the criminal activities that they were guilty of, took them to court, and put them away. And to the best of my knowledge, they are still in prison. So the largest bankers, and they were the only country to do it. So even as much as I might talk on this program, and I do talk about it a lot, that the U.S. could learn a lot from Europe. Europe did not exactly distinguish itself. The EU did not exactly distinguish itself during the crash of 07 and 08. It was only Iceland that went to the bankers, charged them, investigated them, and put them away. I don't want to skip too far past the tax legislation that Tom had mentioned. The top marginal tax rate when Reagan came to power was still 74%.
Yes.
And what that would mean in today's dollars is, because many people get this wrong, and the right wing hate radio and right wing media machine will tell you that means that rich people paid 74 cents of every dollar they earned in taxes. That is what we would scientifically call in the business bullshit. What that is the following. What it means in today's dollars, and I might even have today's dollars wrong, given the recent bouts of inflation that we've had, or at least the greed and wealth extraction inflation that we've had. What it would mean is that for every dollar you earn above $4 million, that's when the 74% kicks in. Not from $1, but from $4 million plus. So when Reagan came to office, that top marginal tax rate was still 74%. He dropped it to 25%. He dropped the capital gains tax rate from 35% to 15%. And he dropped the corporate tax rate from somewhere around 33 to 25. And he ended the tariff and import tax system that fully funded the federal government up until 1919. We remain the only country on earth without a fully structured tariff and import tax system. The average tariff in this country is 2%. And one of the real failures of the so-called left-wing media, of which there really isn't any, is that this hyper panic that seems to take over everyone whenever they talk about tariffs. Tariffs are what builds and protects domestic industries. So why does every other country on earth defend its domestic industry except the United States? Because the corporations they want to be able to make things overseas really super cheap and bring them here to sell and not have to pay union wages, not have to negotiate with unions, not have to fund pensions, not have to do any of that, when they can pay, if they pay workers in China at all. And there's certainly plenty of evidence that many of them receive nothing. Some of them a whopping $1.37 a day, not an hour.
That's true.
They don't want any of that. Reagan promised he would dismantle the tariffs, and he did. He promised, especially the meat packers in Chicago, the meat packing industry, one of the strongest unions going into the 1980 presidential election was the meatpacking union. They took a sack of cash of $1 million, dropped it to the Reagan campaign, and said, destroy this union for us, and we're all yours. And that's exactly what they did. The other piece of tax legislation that Tom mentioned, the largest tax increase in the country in the history of the country at that time. So you might think, if you don't read your history, that, well, the Reagan administration realized that they were running out of money. They couldn't fund the government. They had cut taxes too far. They needed new income. So they just went back and reversed the old tax cuts. But no, that's not what they did. They increased taxes on the poorest people. The highest rate of increase was on the poorest in the country. They raised taxes on the middle class. When you receive, if you are unfortunate enough, but thank God the system is still there, if you should happen to need unemployment compensation because you're out of work, I've used the system in my life. You didn't used to pay taxes on it. You're probably used to paying taxes on it now. You didn't used to, because you had already paid taxes on it when it was taken out of your paycheck to fund the system in the first place.
Exactly right.
Seniors who never knew a Social Security system where they didn't have to pay taxes on their own Social Security, that's all Reagan. Reagan quadrupled the national debt. He added more debt. The only president who ever added more to the national debt than Reagan was Trump. There was a national debt when Reagan came to office. It was about $675 million left over from President Carter. One of the things that President Carter has said was one of the regrets of his administration is that he didn't leave with a balanced budget. Reagan quadrupled that in 4 years and quadrupled it again in his second 4 years. And Trump added about 10 trillion to it with his massive tax cut. So when Tom mentions these tax cuts, you might think to yourself, well, that sounds good. And one of the ironies of republicanism and Reaganism and trickle-down economics and this austerity movement we've been on in this country for 40 plus years now, since the onset of Reaganism, is the idea that a tax cut solves everything. Inherently, it cannot. Economy slow, cut taxes. Economy's roaring, cut taxes. It can't be both. It either solves one problem or the other. It cannot solve both. And what an irony that when the pandemic hit, Trump couldn't put money in your hands fast enough. He couldn't hand you free money fast enough. Now, let me be open and honest, and I have said it here before. That money helped me keep my house. I wouldn't have my house if it wasn't for that money. I think it was the right thing to do.
Yes.
The irony comes in where workers don't deserve this, unions don't deserve that, we shouldn't have unions. Why are we paying toward this? We don't have money for this. We don't have money for veterans. We don't have money for kids' education. We don't have money for the unsheltered. But we can hand out money whenever we want. And it goes back to Jude Wanniski's, I always say his last name wrong, to Santa Claus theory. That when Democrats are in office, when Republicans are in office, give away everything. Get as much money out there as you can get. Give people everything they want. Damn the expenditures or how much money we have to print or whatever debt we incur. To hell with it. Don't even worry about it. And then when Democrats are in office, bitch about the deficit. That's the kill Santa Claus. That's the two Santa Claus theory. I'm late again, 7:04 Eastern Time. We're entering our second hour of the Kennedy Effect, live with you for the 23rd of June, 2024, wherever you might be across Facebook. Thank you. Thank you to every single individual and group, large, small, local, regional, statewide, national, international, every individual that shares our program and that allows our program to be on your space, your part of Facebook. Thank you very, very much. We could not be here if you are not there. So thank you very, very much. Please come on over to my Facebook, Jeff Kennedy, or our group page, That Other Side of Information. Enter your comments and questions. You can be part of this discussion, and we encourage you, invite you to do exactly that. Please be part of the discussion. We want your input. If you have questions, we want to hear them. I will pose them to Tom, or you can pose a question to me. Yell, scream, agree with me, tell me my shirt's too tight, because guess what it is? Because this guy gained too much weight. This guy's still carrying around all his pandemic weight. And I put this t-shirt on and I looked at the clock. I'm like, oh shit, I got to get on. And then I looked and like, wow, this really doesn't fit well anymore. So last time I'll probably be wearing this shirt. But that said, be part of the program. You are welcome. We want you to be part of the program. Hot101.net, our name is our web address. Every type of device on earth, if you can connect to the internet, you can listen to hot101.net 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, below, on, or above planet Earth, desktops, laptops, tablets, phones, Bluetooth it to earbuds, headphones, speakers. You can tell Alexa to play Hot1.net, Bluetooth it in your car. We're always there. Hot101.net is literally one of the very first and originators of global internet radio, and you should be checking it out. There are very, very good, decent, wonderful, and talented people there. Check them out. Hot101.net, everywhere around the globe, 24/7. Also proud to be part of the TCP Media Group. A little heads up for you going forward. It is our plan, he said, his plan to be here. I'm quickly looking at my calendar. To be here straight through for quite a while, even 4th of July weekend, I think we'll probably be here, since the 4th of July, we usually take 4th of July off, but since the 4th of July ends, what the hell am I talking about? Falls on a Thursday, he tried to say. Always good when the guy doing radio can't talk. Falls on a Thursday. We'll probably be here with you on the 7th on Sunday night. And also something that'll happen later in the program, because Tom is not a captive here. I don't expect that he's going to be here for the full 3 hours. After that, George and I will be telling you about an exciting new expansion of the program and a new place that you can find us as well during the week. Program goes to 5 days a week starting July 1st. We'll tell you about that later in the program as well. Again, Tom Bruno has been kind enough to be our guest, donating his time as all our guests do, because I can tell you, close your eyes, folks. That's the appearance fee that we pay people. So anybody that comes here as a guest is doing it as a favor to us and to our audience. So we hope you're enjoying the discussion. And please know, there's a lot of new folks that are in the chat. Probably Tom brought them along. They're certainly not here for me. But I hope that you will know that we are here every Sunday, and we'll be telling you, as I mentioned, we'll be telling you later on in the program about how the program is going to expand to 5 days a week during the weekdays, and we'll tell you about that later on. So to all the new folks who might be here to enjoy the conversation with Tom, please know that you are welcome here. I invite you back. We're here every Sunday, and we will soon be here every weeknight as well, and we hope that you will be too. As far as after the debate, I'm not 100% sure quite what we're going to do yet, because I still get up at 5 in the morning for work. And the debate itself isn't happening until 9 p.m. So I'm not even sure how much of the debate I'm going to watch. I would love to be with you live after it's over, but I got to work for a living. So I'm not sure that we'll be able to do that. But let's get back to the discussion.
Okay, so you started talking about the Economic Recovery and Tax Act, that was ERTA, and then the TEFRA, which was the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act of '82. Those impacted the defined benefits with the favored SEP treatment and kind of ushered in the 401k panacea, which is now around their ankles. But then to a lesser extent, you had the Tax Reform Act of '86, also under Reagan. which altered vesting rights to half of what they were, and it created unfunded liabilities that weren't addressed in the legislation. So, and then of course you had the increased government regulations of the 80s, and then later on, I think it was 2006, Pension Protection Act required more specific and more stricter funding to ensure employees receive their benefits, and that caused a lot of problems for employers who had underfunded them because they had to pay more money into the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corp, PBGC.
We've seen since, especially since the George W. Bush administration, 2000 and onward, these hedge funds will take over these large corporations and then immediately apply to the government to have the pensions quote unquote forgiven or written off.
Right.
In other words, in very simple language, we don't want to be responsible for this. Can you take the burden? Can you allow us to not have to pay the employees their pension? Why has that happened? And why has that been allowed to happen? Why has the government taken such an active role in allowing these hedge fund managers or whomever is buying these corporations to just immediately walk in upon taking over these companies and saying, oh yeah, you don't have to pay all that money, by the way, anyway? And doesn't it really go back to the fact that, in a pre-Reagan era, and even in the beginning of his era, when pensions used to be, they were assets for companies, and then companies began to list them as liabilities.
Right. Because they became liabilities. The unfunded liability it started outweighing the actual benefit that had to be paid out. So they owed more than they could give, basically. And that came from chronic underfunding, as well as some of these regulations that created some of this stuff.
Why do you think the government has been so, or different administrations, I should say,
I think it's too big to
have
fail.
allowed these companies to walk away, and these hedge funds, when they buy, especially the hedge funds, when they buy these companies, have been allowed to, we don't want to have to pay all this money. And the government's letting them walk away from it. What?
Yeah, I wish I knew, Jeff, honest to God. I'm thinking that the government may think, if we let the company fail, it's going to cause, a greater amount of harm than if we just shortchange retirees the amount of money they thought they'd get, and we'll give it half of what they're supposed to get, basically, right? Which is what the PBGC will do. They have a formula, and there's a certain formula, and you'll wind up with far less than what you were supposed to have, but but you'll get something. Mm-hmm. And the company is allowed to exist and keep people employed. And I think that's the driving force for the government, is they can get the income taxes from employed individuals, and the retirees are still going to get something out of it. Not everything, but something. And I think
I should think at least theoretically some corporate tax as well.
Right. Theoretically.
But some income is better than none.
Right. I'm thinking that is what it is. I don't know. I really don't have my finger on the pulse there, but I don't think anybody can, because they're certainly not going to tell us what's going on.
Has the government been too accommodating in allowing these hedge funds to walk away?
I think so. Yes. I think so.
What's the remedy?
Well, the remedy
do we need to go back to, I've advocated on this program since the very beginning that so many of our problems in this country are easily solvable because we already have. And it would seem to me that the New Deal really is the blueprint to solving so much of this. And that regulations, the right has done a very, very good job of making regulations kind of a red alert boogeyman
Right.
sort of word. Regulations are protections. The regulations that keep over the meat packing industry that does not allow them to package spoiled meat and sell it to you so that when you consume it, it kills you. It's a regulation, but it's a protection. The financial regulations that were put into place following the New Deal, especially the separation of the financial services, that if you were a bank, you were a bank and that was the end of it. If you were an insurance company, that was it. If you were an investment house, that was it. You could not be all things. And we've broken all that down with the dismantling of Glass-Steagall. But so what is the remedy? Is it as, I don't want to say simple, but is it as simple as going back to our history and looking at what we solved, how we solved these problems during all the programs of the New Deal, and reinstituting them? Do we need a more active National Labor Relations Board that actually stands up for workers again?
That's the key.
Is that the one? Is that the
Well, that's
turning
the
point?
start. That's the start. But you've got a Supreme Court now that is systematically taking apart every bit of precedent-setting laws, every bit of labor laws that they can get their hands on. Just recently, on June 13th of this year, the Supreme Court ruled on the National Labor Relations Board's ability to pursue preliminary injunctions on companies when there's a belief that they could prevail in a court, right, on a particular matter. It was the ultimate remedial power of the board. They took that away. They basically said that now, instead of a reasonable cause to believe that the practice had happened, the unfair practice had been committed, and that the relief was necessary to restore the status quo, now they've put in a 4-factor test, which makes it nearly impossible. So they've undercut the Labor Relations Board. Now, Biden's Labor Relations Board, frankly, has made some positive gains, but they're undoing what Trump had did with the Labor Relations Board, and I think they've got a long way to go. And the Supreme Court isn't giving them any help. June of 3 years ago, they had the Cedar Point Nursery versus Hasid, right? That was it rewrote in that one. They rewrote the Fifth Amendment. Basically, they added caveats to the rule that resemble the reasoning behind a century-old anti-labor decision that was since overturned. And but the bottom line is that they called union members union officials could not go onto a property. In California, for example, they could go onto a field and talk to workers, but only during your lunch break or an hour. I think it's an hour before and an hour after their job. Now they can't even come on the property, right? So you can't organize workers if you can't get to them, and so that was a big one. They also did in 2018, you had the Epic system versus Lewis, right? That obligates workers to sign class action waivers, so they can't do concerted union activity in a class action kind of suit. They passed that, and of course the big one was the Janus versus AFSCME, taking away the union's ability to get payment for representing workers that aren't actual union members. When you organize a workplace, the law, the National Labor Relations Act, says we have to organize everybody in that particular unit, right? So if I go after, say, all the housekeepers at a job, I have to take all of them. And to win an election, I have to win by a majority of those there, of that whole amount. So if there's 100, I need 50% plus 1, and then I have to represent all of them. So I have to negotiate a contract for all of them. If they get into trouble, I have to represent them, right? So without without distinction whether they're a union member or they're not. And so the agency fee bill, the agency shop process, and the agency fee bill in New Jersey in particular, required the unions to demonstrate every year how much money they spent in actual, representation and things surrounding that, representation of workers. And anything not in that category had to be refunded to those people that didn't join the union, what we call the agency fee. But they had to pay up to 85%, I should say, up to 85% of the regular dues, because that was considered the cost of representing them. But anything, if it didn't come up to 85%, the unions were required every year to return that money to them, that portion. So now Janice comes along and said, no, you can't take the fair share of the cost of representing these people, but you still have to represent them. Right. So they come along for a free ride, and then obviously there was a mass exodus of people who didn't want to belong to the union since they could get it for free. The problem with that is that once you drop below 50% representation, then they can file a decertification. Once they file decertification, they cannot go back to another union for a period of 2 years. So once they throw them out, they're at the mercy of the employer for 2 years before they can even hope to get another union in there if they decide to do that. So, and that has led to, once the union's gone, then the people that were in the union, the shop stewards and those people that were advocated for unions, are fired because they have no protections at that point. The union's been decertified. So it creates a mess. And so, yes, you have to first strengthen the NLRB, but at the same time, we need people in Congress to be writing laws that shore up these areas that need shoring up. We've had opportunities to do it, but everybody has failed at it. I mean, we controlled both houses. Almost every president has controlled both houses the first 2 years of their tenure, their election. So the first 2 years is when you got to get it done, and we have failed. We've had 3 opportunities, the last 3 Democratic presidents, and all 3 didn't get the job done. So that's a problem, right? Because it wasn't a priority. And frankly, Democrats rely on union money because they don't have the pocketbooks that Republicans do. They don't have the corporations and things,
First off, Tom, you bumped off your camera. I'm not sure if you did that on purpose, but you did. No requirement that you be on camera, but you did turn it off.
I'm very sorry. I don't know
No, it's
how that
not a
happened.
problem. It's not a problem. Wasn't that Reagan's real, in addition to the overall thrust of Reaganomics, which was simply to, again, the irony of argument here that Republicans tend to accuse, they don't as much anymore, but tend to accuse Democrats of social engineering and of wealth redistribution. Well, we've had $55 trillion plus of wealth redistribution just in income tax cuts alone, by the way, not even taking into account capital gains, offshoring of offshoring and no tariffs and all that back. $55+ trillion of wealth redistribution to the top, away from the 99% up to the top. Wasn't Reagan's, in addition to that, just doing whatever the wealthy wanted and told him to do, which is why we generally refer to Republicans. There's really only 2 ways left to talk about them. It's either the Trump cult or the Republican corporation, with the employees being the elected officials. They're the employees. The job of the employee, of course, is to deliver profits to the owners. The owners, of course, being the billionaire class. Wasn't the real thrust of Reagan's war on unions really twofold? Is that it made everything cheaper for the owners of these big corporations, and then, of course, delivered more profits to them and more dividends to the shareholders, but also it destroyed the essential a foundational funding source of the Democratic Party, but to starve the Democrats of money. So at the same time that we're enriching the richest, we're starving our political opposition of funding.
Well, it was a class war, and it's continuing today, but it's a class war.
It's never ended.
Yes, yes. And so he actually, I mean, it was in his own words, trickled down, right? Trickled down. He's talking about two separate levels of people, right? The higher and the lower. Class war. It's what it is. But they didn't say it. They just said trickled down. Everybody got, whatever crumbs was trickled down, but
Right.
the wealthy got wealthier, and the poor got poorer, and the middle class evaporated. And it really started, well, I shouldn't say started, but it exacerbated immensely under Reagan's watch. And he had 8 years to do it, and he did a great job of it.
And it continued.
Go ahead.
And it continued.
Oh, yeah, it hasn't stopped. But, now, they're, I said before that these 401ks, the panacea around 401ks is now landing squarely around their ankles, because many of these folks have children, right? And these kids, are, well, they don't even know what a pension is, right? As you started your show with, right? They don't. They have no idea that there's such a thing. They've only ever known a 401k or an IRA or an annuity. And those are the words that they know. But a defined benefit, it's foreign. And, we have right now, we have the last installment. The next 5 years is going to be the last installment of what's called the peak boomers. This is the 30 million people that were born between the years of 59 and 64, right? 1959, 1964.
The post-war baby boom.
Right. And those are the people, they're getting ready to retire now, this year and the next 5 years. And I was reading an article, I think it was in Forbes, but I don't quote me on that. But they said that not only are they entering for retirement financially unprepared, but that the economy is likely to take a hit, with industries like manufacturing and education needing to replace these boomers, and that the new retirees will likely be disproportionately leaning on Social Security to stay afloat, and that is not going to give them enough money to keep their lifestyle. It's impossible. And so, this boomer retirement bomb, is what some are calling it, is going to be costly for the rest of the workers in the economy, because Social Security isn't funded to handle it. It's just not going to be able to handle it. And so they're going to have to do something, and probably a lot of somethings. They're going to have to raise taxes, and corporations are going to want.
Isn't the simplest way to Senator Sanders and Senator Warren, Senator Wyden, account the Progressive Caucus of the House? The answer to Social Security is to eliminate the cap.
Well, that is a great start. That's a great start. But they're going to have to do more than that. And I think the other thing is that when Social Security was started, I think the average morbidity table, the average lifespan was like 60 or something like that. I don't know. Don't quote me on that either. But I know it was a lot lower than it is now. And the assumption was most people would never reach retirement age, right? But if they did, they'd have something to fall back on. But it was never designed to be their sole source of support. It was just to keep them out of poverty. So the bottom line is that now we have ages, different reports come up with different numbers, but between 70 and 82 right now is where the morbidity tables seem to land. I will tell you that in New Jersey, the pension system we use, we have actuaries come in, and we have to adjust our contribution rate every 3 years, because the mortality tables are coming in and they're changing, and not by a little. We're adding a year or two at a clip, and that translates to a lot of money. coming out of the fund. So we have to take in more money to accommodate that. And so, and with wages coming in higher than we anticipate, and they have been coming in higher, they're now beating the rate of inflation all over the country. The raises are coming in higher than the rate of inflation. So when your plan factors in on an average 2% raise a year, and your raises are now 4 or 5%, you have to accommodate that because your pension is based on your wages, as well as your years of service and your current age. So, and with people living longer, they're going to get paid a pension for a longer period of time. So that, again, on a defined benefit, your what they call the ASF, your the money that you've put in, basically, is usually spent on your benefits the first 1.5 to 2 years. After that, you're on money that was acquired through investments. And if you live 50 years past that, I mean, that's, or 20 years or 30 years. Right now, we're factoring on about 20 years. But as that time goes up, that's an unfunded liability also.
Republicans love to talk about raising the retirement age. Nikki Haley actually campaigned for president.
Oh, and I think it's going to happen.
Raising the retirement age to, I think she wanted to land on 72 or even 74. Is that something that you personally support, or do you?
I don't support raising it that high. And frankly, I'd rather not see it go up. I'd rather see them alter other pieces of Social Security to accommodate the need. I think you started off with the right trajectory, and that is increase or take away the cap.
Eliminate the cap.
Yeah, take away the cap. And then because right now, those people making more money, they don't have to pay any income, any Social Security tax on the money over the threshold.
And for folks who may not know, the Social Security tax cap stands at roughly, I'm coming from memory, about $142,000.
Yeah.
So every dollar that you earn up to 142,000, and again, my that figure might be slightly wrong, either low, it might be plus or minus. My recollection is it's 142 now. So that every dollar that you make up to 142,000, and by the way, this is regular income, not dividends from stocks or any of that. You pay Social Security tax. Every dollar above that, you pay nothing. Not a reduced rate, you pay nothing. So Tesla just approved a 10-year, $44.5 billion compensation package for Elon Musk. He still only pays Social Security tax on 142,000. So if you're even lucky enough to earn 142,000 as an individual, which, by the way, would put you in the top 10% in this country economically, you pay Social Security tax on 100% of your income. Mr. Musk, who's going to make just from Tesla $4.5 billion a year for the next 10 years, only pays Social Security tax on 142,000. And again, the money that he makes from stocks and investments is not subject to Social Security tax at all. One of the other remedies that Senator Sanders and Senator Warren and a host of others has championed is something that, again, I hope you're sitting down. Waka, waka, waka. I hope you're sitting down. Something that we used to do in this country, something that was part of the New Deal, which was the stock transaction tax. Now, Senator Sanders has professed that he would only like to see an electronic stock transaction tax, so that when computers are thrown into action to stimulate trading, to prevent a crash of the market, that each one of those transactions be taxed at 0.001%. And there are so many of these transactions taking place that the money gained from that electronic stock transaction tax would be enough to fund Medicare for all and eliminate student debt and fully fund Social Security in perpetuity. And not just fund it in its current form, but expand it. We know what the answers are. We know what they are. We simply have to have the political will to institute them. FDR had the will to do that. We need to find that will again. There are, at the end of the day, folks, I've told you this 100 times. Mr. Musk, there are 3 people in this country that have as much wealth as the bottom 198 million. Just 3.
Yep.
And they can buy a lot of influence with that money. They can buy a lot of political advertising with that money. But at the end of the day, when they walk into the booth, they have the same single vote that you do. And there's more of us. It's exactly why we have to vote and we have to stick together. There's more of us than them.
Very true.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You
Very
were going to
true.
say something.
Oh,
My
no.
apologies.
Well, a
Got on
couple
a roll.
things. No problem. A couple things. You're absolutely right. We need 60% of each house to go our way, frankly. They don't have to be all one party, just 60% like-minded in terms of wanting to fix Social Security. And
Although I would say at
and
this
what
point,
else-
it's only one party. There's only
yeah,
one
and what
functioning.
else ails the country, right?
There's only one functioning political party left in this country.
Right. Well, right now that's true. And it's not the so-called cancel culture. Because well, I'll get into that later, but maybe
Well, the former Republican Party, known as Republicans,
right.
have no platform. Their literal position is that they have no platform. So when you stand for nothing, how do you consider yourself a political party to start with? They are a corporation.
Yes.
And those that are not actively being paid by the corporation are simply members of a cult at this point. And I don't really think that you can make any fact-based argument against any of that. So that leaves us with one functioning political party that happens to be our party, the Democratic Party. And we're not perfect. And I suspect we never will be. We're the only ones trying.
Right.
We're the only ones that are interested in governing. We're the only ones that seem to be seeking out answers to the questions rather than just no to everything other than tax cuts for rich people.
When Trump took office, there were 293 Republicans in the legislature, in Congress. And now they lost, let's say, 45% of them, and they just lost a few more. They lost 12 more this year. And these are people. I mean, 5 this year out of the 12 were committee chair people, and they're saying basically what you just said is that they have no platform. It's just broken down into rancor basically, and they're just tired of it and they can't get anything done. They said the current crop doesn't want to govern. They just want their clickbait basically. But in any case, so getting back to this, to the idea of Social Security, you were right on 142,000. I think that was in 2020. The current rate,
George was kind enough to put in the chat for me that
it's 168 now.
It's now 168. It went up from 160
last year.
168.
Right. That's true.
So I stand corrected, and
no problem.
Perfectly fine with being corrected. By the way,
no, it's okay, but it's still not enough.
No,
they need, so and
to
it's a
maintain solvency. No,
it's a 6.2% rate of tax on that money. So On 168,000, you're talking about roughly around $10,000. And you'll take that out in the first 5 months, 4 months, right? So
One person.
one
would take that
person,
out, right.
exactly. So, so if you're going to live longer than 4 or 5 months after retirement, you're going to need a little more money than that in there, right? So, that is an issue, and that's where defined benefit plans come in, right? They were there to augment that Social Security system, to augment your ability to maintain a certain level of comfort in your retirement. And that's been shot down. And it is coming back. There's definitely even public sector. I talked about IBM, but in 2015, 3 different states who had already gone to these defined contribution plans decided to abandon them and went back to their defined benefit plan because it was costing them too much money and they weren't retaining the staff that they used to retain with the defined benefit, which is the whole reason why public workers enjoy the defined benefit. And I can't tell you how many times I get asked by people, it's more a rhetorical question than an actual question. So, well, why should they get a pension when I don't have one? And I always say to them, that's the wrong question. The question is, why don't you have one? That's the question, because you should have one, because it's the right thing to have. And, companies should be rewarding you with something like a pension so that you're taken care of in your retirement after you've dedicated your life to them. Right?
So even though that these gains or regains, if you will, I think I made another word, are slight, but they are happening.
Right.
How much would you see that as a result of the tight, what is generally a tight labor market, in combination with the fact that there was this labor awakening during the pandemic that Republicans love to talk about, that nobody wants to work these days.
Right.
I think everybody wants to work. I think they just don't want to get shit on.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So, and treated like cattle.
Right.
So how much, when you see a company like IBM, and let's be honest, that's not mom and pop. That's a global 100 company. When they are making this move back to a more traditional type of retirement benefit, do you believe that a contributing factor to that is the tight labor market, and that they want to keep people and or entice people because people are sick of being shit on?
Yes. The latter. The latter. I believe that people are struggling. They're blaming everybody but the responsible parties, but they're blaming everybody for their woes. I think they, that in order to try to keep these people, working, they have to do something to entice them to stay, because the pay isn't enough. We've gone from an economy back in the 50s and 60s and even the early 70s where one person could support a family of 4. Their salary would support a family of 4. And now you have two family members working, and they're still struggling. Because
I believe it was up into the we've given this stat on the show before, that I think it was up into the mid 1960s, as early as late as, proper term here, a family of 4 could survive on 1.2 full-time salaries.
Right.
So there was that little 0.2 over, which would generally be covered by overtime or bonuses, things like that, unpaid for unused vacation time, things like that. That is now 2.7.
Yes. And I believe it. I mean, I didn't have the numbers, but I would believe that.
Here's
So-
here's a historical question for you because I don't know how much longer you're staying and I want to get everything in.
Well,
Hey,
whatever.
welcome to stay. I mean, you
I'm
stay
here for as
you
long
wish.
as you
If
need
have
me.
to go. How did the original Bill of Rights are political rights? They're law and legal based rights. Free speech, petition your government, a jury trial, speedy trial. Don't have to quarter troops. They're political rights. President Roosevelt wanted a second Bill of Rights. It was an economic Bill of Rights that you had the right to a job. You had a right to earn an income. You had a right to see a doctor. You had a right to a home. You had a right to vacation. You literally had a right to take a vacation.
You do in Europe,
Well, listen,
30 days.
I've said
Back
on
from the
this
get-go.
program before, how did Europe get the modern social democratic governments and economies that it has? From us,
Yes.
because they didn't have functioning governments after the war. The Germans wrote into their constitution that companies of 500 employees or more must have union representation on their boards of directors. Truman himself wanted that added to their constitution. They got it from us. We're the ones that have forgotten it because a very small, tiny handful of really rich people don't want to pay taxes. And the American worker, the American, not even just the American worker, a breathing, sentient American resident now has been turned into really only one of three things, it would seem to me, Tom. You're either creating wealth for the rich, you're giving them wealth because you're buying what they make. And if you can't do any of those two things, die quickly.
Yeah. No, that's right. That's right. And I don't know that we'll ever get to economic rights. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Not in my lifetime. Because I don't think the current crop of political personnel on either side of the equation, frankly, has the intestinal fortitude to stomach what would come their way if they even tried to get it introduced on the floor. So I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't. I wish it would. It absolutely is needed. And we have plenty of places to point to where it's been successful, but it's not going to happen here. People have been indoctrinated into this idea that a national health care, for example, is somehow socialism, instead of being a human right. And of course, nobody wants socialism. So that's the bad word.
Except that you already have it.
Well, exactly. But
The police are social. The simple definition of socialism, as you well know, is simply the masses contributing into something to pay for a service that they cannot provide for themselves.
Exactly.
The police are inherently socialistic. So are public schools, the roads, airports, water systems, power systems, well, it used to be phone systems till they were broken up,
Yeah.
but institutions of higher learning.
Right.
And of course, let's not forget the single largest socialistic institution on the planet, to the tune of about, as Senator Sanders would tell us, to the tune of about $1.4 trillion a year, the United States military.
Right.
So we already have socialism.
And we have it for corporations. I mean, we've the big bank bailout, right? For example, now the special inspector general for the TARP summary of the bailout says that the total commitment of the government was $16.8 trillion. Now everybody was told it was 700 billion, but it was $16.8 trillion with 4.6 trillion already paid back in 2015, at the time when this report was written. but it's $16.8 trillion. We bought all the problems out. And now don't forget, rating agencies like Standard and Poor's, paid by the banks, which is obviously a conflict of interest, have huge influence on the ratings of securities. And during the housing bubble, they continued to give AAA ratings to toxic mortgages, right? And so the Justice Department tried to sue them, for their part in falsifying ratings. But the HSBC Bank did money laundering for Mexican drug cartels to the tune of 881 billion, according to the Justice Department. Right? Nothing happened. Nobody went to jail. JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs both betted against the toxic mortgages after the crash started with hedge funds. And, they made money selling short on the financial catastrophe. They were fined 296 million and 550 million, but, JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs respectively. But that was it. Fines. Nobody went to jail. Martha Stewart went to jail for less than that.
And the fines were nowhere near the money that they brought in by doing it.
Exactly.
They were they were literally pennies on the dollar to what they brought in doing it. Again, we mentioned earlier on the program, Iceland is the only one that took its bankers to court and put them in jail.
So the bottom line is that until we're ready to wrestle with the idea of calling some of these programs, like the right to an education, a human right instead of a socialistic point of view or ideology, until we're ready to understand that there's a difference. We're not asking people to give up their financial worth. We're asking people to pay their fair share. Why should the other 98% or 99% be left with the crumbs on the table and paying the bulk of the income tax or the tax in this country? And the billionaires walk scot-free, either paying zero or next to zero.
Or in some cases, getting enormous refunds.
Exactly. It's absolutely crazy to me that companies, like Verizon can come in with multiple billion-dollar profits and pay zero in taxes, and then complain that the corporate business tax is too high. It couldn't be high enough. You still don't pay it.
One of the very underrated achievements of the Biden administration in its first term has been the global agreement for a global minimum corporate tax.
Yes.
Which, if I'm recall correctly, is 25%. I might be wrong. It might be 15, but at least it got a worldwide corporate minimum. So that some of these corporate havens, like the various Caribbean islands, and I'm ashamed to say my ancestral home of Ireland, can not just be these tax havens where you put a cubicle and that becomes your corporate headquarters, and then you don't pay any tax.
Exactly. So, I mean, we've got a lot of things that have contributed to, a lot of the problems that we're seeing, especially, but with the union drop and the DBPs kind of coming in low, I think the country is eventually going to see that they need to do something different, and I think they're going to see a change, albeit gradual. And I think. For example, the three public sector ones that I was talking about before was in 2015, actually before the pandemic. They came over went back to their defined benefit plan. That was Alaska, West Virginia, and Michigan. And
two of which are not exactly blue states.
Right.
And by the way, if you really want to talk about socialism, since you mentioned Alaska, you mean Alaska, where they take oil benefits and give a check to every single resident of
that's
the
right.
state?
Yes.
If there's
Which
anything
is
more
socialism at the
socialistic than
purest sense
that,
of the word.
in one of the most red states in the country.
Yes.
And one that didn't used to be, by the way, but like
right. But I'm just saying, yes, you're exactly correct. And so yes. But they got away from the defined contribution plan. They said it didn't help existing underfunding problem, and in fact increased pension plan costs. The workers under the plans faced increased levels of retirement insecurity. And it was the best way to address pension underfunding problem and responsible funding policy. So that's why they switched. Um,
How much does the so-called right to work states
uh,
involved in this? How is there any way to adequately describe their
Alex,
it's going to sound like a making a pun here, but their contribution to the problem of these right to work states, or as you
Yeah.
know, Tom Hartman would like to call them, the right to work for less.
that's what it's, yeah, yeah. Well, that's been promulgated and pushed through Alex. And they, you know,
The
they've
American
got the tentacles.
Legislative Exchange Council, which is a branch of the Koch network
Exactly. The Koch
and fully
brothers,
funded by the Koch.
yes, the Koch brothers fund that, and
That's their form. That's their organization that goes to for those of you who may not know at home. ALEC is, again, the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, is fully funded and created by the Koch network. They go to local legislatures, your state legislature. They even go into large cities, and they're now working down into small towns.
Yep.
Pass such legislation like affecting overtime pay or taxing tips or gas taxes, trying to pass legislation to make it more prohibitive to buy an electric car, taking away subsidies or in some cases adding extra taxes on top of things like trying to put solar panels on your house.
right.
Here in Pennsylvania, they helped craft a law that if you want solar on your house, it's going to cost you more, making it more difficult for you to sell extra electricity back into the grid. And that even if a housing developer wanted to build an entire brand new community and never connect it to the grid, they still have to connect it to the grid so that and especially gas lines, so that the gas companies make their money connecting up gas lines that the developer never planned to use. So Alex done a lot of actually these local and statewide abortion bans and so on.
Yes.
Alec is the Koch brothers libertarian dream local municipality, county, and state arm that drafts legislation on behalf of for legislators so they can go on golf trips and things like that. And sure as hell, Pennsylvania's deep in it while
Well,
they write the legislation and then they sponsor, quote unquote, sponsor
right.
a legislator to introduce it for them.
They literally have a book. It's a 3-ring binder with, that's tabbed with types of legislation and suggested wording. And all the legislator has to do is pull out the page they want, put their name on the top, and submit it. It's really that simple for them, and they're doing a lot of harm. They're responsible for a lot of right to work laws, a lot of the anti-union laws. They're undermining a lot of basic rights for workers, and that's who they attack. It's the workers, it's the working class. That is the problem, and of course, with the decline of unions, went the decline of these defined benefit programs, and so people are now facing, as I was saying, that 30 million people who never even saw, or maybe the earlier ones saw, but the later ones certainly didn't see a defined benefit plan at their workplace, and now they're ill prepared for retirement. And as one person in that group study said that trying to something to the effect that only the wealthy will have enough income security to retire. The rest of us will have to pray that we live long enough to keep our job so that we don't die in the street.
Oh, and that's why I said what I said before, is that I think it would seem to me, I don't really even think this is speculation anymore. I think when I used to start saying it here, I think there was a level of speculation to it. I don't think there's any speculation about this any longer. It would seem to me that even more than the top 1%, really the top 1/10 of 1%, has
Also-
made a conscious decision, Tom, that democracy is no longer convenient. It is actually something that might hinder their relentless and unceasing and unending quest for wealth, and not just more wealth, but all of it. We make the joke here, even though it's not really a joke, that it's become all too cliche, it would seem to me, that Republicans want to take us back to the 50s. I agree, except it's the 1850s.
Yeah.
It's a pre-Civil War society. And I would even make the argument that it's really more like the 1150s. There is a landed gentry and the serfs. And that's it. And never the twain shall meet. Only the landed gentry gets an education. Only the landed gentry can own property. Only they. And that the serfs are simply there to provide them wealth and to provide them bodies for an army when there's a fight. It would seem to me that that's the society that they're pushing for.
And you know what? That's definitely, I mean, I see where you're coming from on that one. But I will also, want to add that we're staring down not just this peak boomer piece, but there's a collision of demographics, automation, and inequality in this country. That the confluence of those items is gonna potentially dramatically reshape the world. And there was a report done by Bain. It was Bain Financial. It was Romney's company.
Yep, Bain Capital.
All right. So Bain, their subsidiary, Bain Financial, did a report that said it was labor 2030, and they indicate that this collision would change our world in the 2020s and beyond. When we had the Industrial Revolution back in the late 1800s, we had 40 years to acclimate to it as it transpired. We had 40 years to kind of adjust. This is coming quickly. You already have, robotics, you have drones making deliveries, you have, cars that have no drivers, right? That kind of thing. It's going to be putting taxi drivers out of work. It's going to be putting,
Truck drivers,
delivery people, right?
We already see it at the grocery store, the self checkout,
Exactly.
or the who's the one? I think it's Whole Foods. That you just fill up your cart, you walk through this sort of arch at the end, and it scans everything in your cart, and you're good. You just walk out.
Right. And who gets displaced during that period of time?
It's not the rich.
It's not the rich. No.
Right.
It's the schmucks at the bottom of the scale. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but that's how they're viewed, right, by these people upstairs, right? The schmucks at the bottom of the scale. So they're the ones that get displaced, and they have to fend for themselves. Now, how are they going to do that? Well, you have a government that seems to be abandoning at every opportunity any kind of help for the poor, any kind of we call it why are we going to give them welfare? Why they're sitting at home doing nothing. Well, why are they doing nothing? Is it because they were displaced because of automation? Then why don't we retrain them? Well, nobody sent me to school. Why should they go to school for free? You get into that.
And I can't get over the irony of some of these arguments from the right. Oh, well, the poor people are just collecting welfare because they have no skills. But of course, we won't invest in education to give them any skills.
Correct.
The bottom line is that you want them poor and stupid. There's a reason why these poor white and kids of color throughout the South, their only way out is the military. Yes. Because at least we can keep providing the military with fresh bodies to use in wars for the rich. Why is the United States Navy, why do we have 2 full carrier groups over in the Persian Gulf and fighting the Houthi pirates off of Ethiopia, protecting private oil tankers? We're paying for all of that. And
Right.
not just with money, we're paying for it with kids, our collective kids' lives, because we're subsidizing the corporations yet again.
Yep.
In Pennsylvania, we give $4 billion in free money to the fossil fuel industry every single year. We give $500 million to the horse racing industry. We give over 500 billion nationally, although Senator Sanders would tell you the real total is more like 800 billion. We spend 800 billion a year on the national defense. Senator Sanders would tell you it's more like 1.4 trillion. Globally, we give over 5 trillion in subsidies to the fossil fuel industry. Gas in this country should be about $1.25, $1.50. You
Yeah.
can't have historically high inflation and also have historically high corporate profits. You can't have both. They are fundamentally incongruent with each other. There is a legitimate economic condition known as inflation, folks. There truly is. What we've experienced over the last 4 years isn't it. It's called wealth extraction. Let me reset the program. We're going to shift topics here for our last hour. 8:05 Eastern Time. This is the Kennedy Effect live with you for the 23rd of June, 2024. We fully expect, barring anything unforeseen, that we will be back with you next week and for the subsequent weeks going forward. Tom will be with us, I think, for maybe another half hour because George and I have some business that we want to talk to you about before we sign off. The Villain's View, I am almost certain, is coming up live following us here at hot101.net and that other side of information. You can watch it live both places. Wherever you are on Facebook, whatever, I still continue to not be able to share, even though Facebook has told me I would be able to by now. Interesting stuff. I almost swore again. Interesting stuff. But we'll try to get the program out to the remainder of groups that we were not able to get it out to. Wherever you might be watching, if you are watching live in any of these groups, large, small, local, regional, global, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We could not do it without you. Please remember that if you've jumped into the program midstream, so to speak, no pun intended, the best place to catch up with our program is our home group Facebook page. I have it pinned right to the top. That other side of information, as well as our YouTube channel, also called That Other Side of Information. It's the easiest place to take the program in a recorded fashion. You can watch it in smaller bits. 3 hours is a long time to sit and focus on one thing. We don't go to the movie theater for 3 hours. You probably don't want to take all this in 3 hours, no matter how awesome Tom is. But we go to YouTube. I think it's the easiest place to watch it in a recorded fashion and watch it throughout the week. And I continue to know that a growing number of people are doing that. The easiest place to watch it on Facebook in small bits is our home group Facebook page. That Other Side of Information, the show is pinned to the top. It's very easy to find in the featured section. Hot101.net, our name is our web address. Google Play Store and the Apple App Store to use the hot101.net apps. Great thing about the apps, you download them, you tap it, it opens, you're listening. No password, don't have to create an account, no credit card, no blood sample, don't have to sign over your house or your firstborn. You download the app, Apple App Store for Apple devices, Google Play Store for Android, tap it, opens, you're listening, period. Done. End of story. Super simple. And it's there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you can connect to the internet, you can listen to hot101.net. Proud to be a member of the TCP Media Group as well. And just once again, the Villain's View comes up immediately after us on hot101.net. And you will find them on our Facebook page, That Other Side of Information, right at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. The Villain's View follows our program live. Tom, I want to switch topics a little bit for the remainder of our time into politics, strict politics.
Okay.
Um,
I thought we were doing that.
well, yes, but I'm gonna even get deeper.
Go ahead.
You've done strategy for a long time, and one thing that Democrats, I think, get, undue grief for is that we have a quote unquote messaging problem.
Yes.
Well, I think part of that messaging problem is that when you have about 30, 35, 40% of the public who simply doesn't give a shit what you say, they're not going to believe it. If I go to a Trump rally and tell them the grass is green and the sky is blue, simply because my last name is Kennedy, they're either going to kill me, and by the way, the family's used to that. It's what we do. Or they're just going to say, no, you're wrong because you're a Democrat. And a certain percentage of them are going to want to put me in some kind of internment camp for being Democrat. So for being a member of the Democratic Party. So how do you message that? How do you message to that? It would seem to me that that group is very similar to the Israelites in the desert after Moses led them out of bondage. They broke God's law. He made them wander until the entire generation passed away. I suspect that this generation is not terribly different. How do you message to people who simply, they don't just will not listen, not that they even don't want to or don't understand what you're telling them, they simply won't listen?
Well, that's actually multifaceted. First, let me just say, speaking on this particular issue, I wrote a piece in my blog on nuclearpolitics.com, dealing specifically with this intrinsic versus extrinsic motivations. And Democrats tend to be intrinsic. They tend to identify with what they're doing and why they're doing it. They work in healthcare because they feel good about themselves when they do that, or they work at a job that gives them some kind of internal reward. Extrinsic individuals are more like the Trump camp, where it's make money, fame, wealth at any cost, and you're never going to get through to them. That's not going to happen. And so, I'm not saying every one of the people that support Trump are like that, but I am saying that that's a predominant feature with many. And that is something you're not going to get around. So what you have to do is decide, Republicans by and large are going to vote Republican, Democrat by and large are going to vote Democrat, but we've lost a lot of people, actually both sides did, to an independent group, to a non-affiliated group. And that is the group that needs to be targeted with the message, because they're willing to hear, unlike the other two sides that are already set in stone with whatever they want to hear, right? I mean, it's a bias that goes both ways, but the middle is what needs to be concentrated on. And I've been trying to explain that. Look, I said this to Robbie Mook during the Hillary Clinton campaign, and tried to explain to him, what was going on, and sending people from Brooklyn to work in the Slate Belt of Pennsylvania was a bad idea, right? And he didn't listen. Afterwards, after we lost Pennsylvania, he said, "Oh, you were prophetic." I said, "Well, I didn't want to be prophetic. I wanted to win, and prophecy means nothing." So, and so that's where I'm saying we need to focus in the middle.
The book of Revelation is a prophecy too. I don't think any of us want to see it.
Yeah, right. That's true. But yes, so I think you're not going to get through to those people, just like they won't get through to us, right? I mean, that goes both ways. We are firmly in the belief that we're in the right, and I do believe that, because I think, by and large, morality-wise, I think we're there, right? The other side doesn't seem to have that. At least the leader.
No, again, no platform, no plan, no legislation,
right?
No
and
answers,
leader,
no.
Right, and the leader tends to be fomenting a lot of violence and hatred and things like that. I mean, I was looking at a report on the Great Replacement theory, right? That was kind of espoused during the Charlottesville riot, right?
Mhm.
Or Charlottesville episode there.
Although its roots go back to Nazi
It
Germany.
goes back quite a bit, yeah.
Yep.
But now you currently have the current crop of legislators or Congress people that are promoting this stuff is mind-boggling. You got people like Blake Masters, Senate candidate from Arizona, Eric Gretton's Republican Senate candidate from Missouri, J.D. Vance, another Senate candidate from Ohio, Ron Johnson, who's a current senator from Wisconsin. You got Lauren Boebert is in that crew. Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course. How could we forget that one?
The Freedom Caucus, largely.
Right, pretty much
The
Freedom
quote
Caucus,
unquote
right.
Freedom Caucus.
But they're
Yeah.
mainstreaming this stuff, and then you have states like the Carrie Lake in Arizona, the gubernatorial candidate, and State Senator Wendy Rogers, Governor Greg Abbott, and his lieutenant governor, both espousing this stuff of the great great replacement. So when you have this stuff being mainstreamed and creating the kind of hatred and xenophobia and racism that you see happening, it's hard to kind of explain to people that have normalized it now, right? To explain to people how it's wrong. Because how could it be wrong? These people in esteemed positions are espousing it, right? So
If Fox News was the entity that it is now in 1930, 31, would FDR have ever been elected president?
yes, and I'll tell you why. Because I think the country would have basically kicked them off the air. There was a different time. I mean, even 1960, you had people that gave a shit about each other, and you could have you had two political parties, and within those two political parties, two ideologies. You had your liberal Democrat and your conservative Democrat, your liberal Republican, your conservative Republican, and you could have the combination of the two come and meet and work out things for the benefit of the country. You could leave your door unlocked, the keys in your car, it was going to be there the next day, right? There was a different societal norm at that time. That the whole societal set of mores was different. Now they've normalized hatred, they've normalized all this stuff, and we've had like shootings. We see these kids getting killed all over the country, and then you have politicians saying, "Oh, let's pray for them." No, how about let's do something with the guns? Right? No, we can't do that. That's Second Amendment. No, that's not Second Amendment. Even Jefferson understood that as the time progressed, you would need to change the Constitution to deal with the new developments in there.
Well, Scalia himself said the idea that the Second Amendment is universal and I'm butchering the quote, but without limit is ridiculous on its face.
Exactly. And Jefferson wrote to James Madison in France and said just that it would be like having an adult try to wear his coat from boyhood as an adult, and we wouldn't do that, and we shouldn't have the Constitution last in perpetuity without adjusting it for the time. So and I butchered that all up, but I mean, but that's the quote is there's anybody can look it up, Jefferson's quote on the Constitution and whether it should be changed. And that's so. I mean, the founding fathers understood, just like separation of church and state. Madison wrote that it was there to prevent the bloodbath that Europe had seen, right? That was his quote, right? So, and yet here we are, Louisiana is going to post the 10 Commandments and pass the ammunition.
Not one of the commandments, by the way, they happen to actually live by or believe in.
Well,
I've
exactly.
talked about on this program probably too much.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I've been very fortunate, and I do consider myself that very fortunate to have rediscovered my faith in recent years. And Kristen and I, of course, are now members of the Central Moravian Church here in Bethlehem. And I don't know how that you can profess yourself to be any type of person of faith, and then go out and ignore all of it.
Well, exactly the point. I mean, how I just there's a disconnect between the rhetoric and the reality. And it used to be that you could
There is an
connect the
Earth
two.
1 and an Earth 2 here. I mean, I've talked about that here too. Here
Yeah.
on Earth 1, Trump is a felon.
Yeah,
On Earth 2, he's a messiah.
exactly. When I was still doing my political job with the union, I was meeting with Senator Lautenberg from New Jersey at the time. God rest
Yep.
his soul.
I
I was
met the
meeting with him.
senator. He was a good man.
Yeah, he was, and I sat down with him. We were at Milano's in Georgetown, and I was trying to get him to sign on to legislation that I had written to address some issues with Medicaid, with the developmental disabilities. And I had met, I'd already got Senator Kennedy to sign on, and he was going to put it under his name. I met with, Lautenberg to get him signed in. And in comes Alphonse D'Amato, Republican, New York,
State.
right?
Yep.
Conservative, right?
Yep.
And I'm picking up the papers. I'm kind of like grabbing my stuff and kind of hiding it. And Frank is going, I don't know, it's okay. It's okay. He's a Republican. Yeah.
Yeah.
Frank says,
Well, Al D'Amato was one of those people that I think you mentioned. He was fiscally conservative. I happen to think most people are fiscally conservative. Nobody wants to pay more taxes
right.
than is necessary. No one does. I
Exactly.
think the most progressive Democrat does not want to pay more taxes than is necessary, but we simply know that we have to. It's part of living in a civilized society, and we seem to be a heck of a lot more willing to contribute to the society than a certain handful of others. And
Okay.
the fact that enough of our sizable enough portion of our fellow Americans have been convinced that if and those three richest people, by the way, are Musk, Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg, that if they just had another billion, 5 billion, 10 billion, 100 billion more, that we'll all benefit. This might sound like a very silly analogy, but I'm going to ask it to you anyway, because it's an analogy that we've made here before. If the situation with wealth in this country, and by the way, wealth disparity in this country is worse, even after 4 years of President Biden, is worse than it was before the Republican Great Depression. And by the way, folks, that's what we referred to it as, what history called it, the Republican Great Depression up to the 50s, late 50s. It was the Republican Great Depression, and it still is. And so was the Republican Great Recession of 07 and 08. And by the way, it began in 07. That said, if the wealth situation in this country was food, if 3 people had enough food to feed 198 million, there'd be a second French Revolution. So why aren't more Americans pissed off about that? And by the way, the polling suggests that even 70+% of Republicans believe the rich do not pay enough, but yet we do nothing about it.
Yep. And as long as Citizens United is left to stand, it's going to continue to be that. When we put money into politics at the rate they're putting it in, and allowing dark money to come in,
Unaccountable money.
Right, dark money coming in. Yeah, it's going to continue.
You mentioned Senator Kennedy. How damaging. One of the very first things that Reagan did is he made Bill Bennett Secretary of Education. I'm sure you remember.
Yeah.
The very first things that Bill Bennett did was to eliminate the mandate that civics and government be taught in the schools, because it's very hard to complain about something when you have no idea how it works.
That's right.
How damaging has that been to our society?
I think it's been extremely damaging, and I think that it harkens back, and I've told this story a number of times in my life. When I was in North Carolina, living in Gastonia, just outside of Charlotte, I was attending a school board meeting, and one of the school board members Republican, was the owner of a textile mill there. And they were talking about, at the time, getting some computers for the school. And he said, what do they need computers for? He said, well, because that's, it's taking off, and, we want the kids to, have a good education and know, how to use these things so they could compete in the world. He says, well, I don't want them little son of a bitches learning anything. They won't work in my mill. That was a quote on the record there. And I mean, my jaw hit the ground. I said, he did that on the record. He did
But
that on the record.
I think that's what it all boils down to. We say we want skilled workers and do nothing to make them skilled. We
Exactly.
say we want to lift people out of poverty and do everything we can to keep them in poverty. The United States is now the least economically mobile of all the so-called first world countries on earth. If you are born poor, you will die poor. If you are born middle class, you have a much better percentage of dying poor than you do of even staying middle class. And your chances of moving up economically are almost non-existent. Now in this country, folks, in the height of the New Deal, in the height of the implementation, he tried to say, the implementation of the New Deal, late 50s, early 60s, almost 2/3 of Americans identified themselves as middle class. Now, I'm not saying they actually were middle class.
Right.
They identified as middle class. That percentage is now 47%. For the first time since such a poll has been taken.
Right.
And some of these polls in different forms go back to the mid 1800s.
Yeah.
Only 47% of Americans even identify as middle class. I have news for you. 47% of the country is not middle class.
No.
It's only about 38 to 40% now. And it was over 50 before Reagan took office. I would also add, I was going to go somewhere else with this. Oh, yes. Yay, brain. Yay, brain. I am 50. I turned 55 Friday.
Happy birthday.
Last Friday. One of the great comforts of my life is knowing there are more days behind me than ahead. I am also the first generation in the history of this country, the very first from its founding, to be economically worse off than my parents. Now I'm 55. I do not have children, but I very easily could, just given my age. If I did have children, let's say I had a child at 25, that child would be 30 now. I think. Math. Yes, George will correct me if I'm wrong. Math is not my strong suit. That generation would be the second generation to be economically worse off than their parents, which would be me. It's perfectly logical that if I had a 30-year-old, I would have a grandchild. That generation would be the third generation on the trot, as we say in the ancient Gaelic, to be economically worse off than their parents. This is not a happenstance. This is not a mistake.
No.
That since Reagan, you are 3 generations on the trot worse off than the generation before them. This is called a plan. Reaganism was not a concept. It also wasn't new, by the way. We've told you 100 times on this program, one of the downfalls of the Roman Empire is that the rich people didn't want to pay for it anymore. And the loss of democracy. That the Senate became the Roman Senate became a place that the Senate seats were bequeathed through the generations, and that if you were rich enough, you could buy a Senate seat, that you weren't elected to it anymore. The end of democracy and a very small handful of rich people who didn't want to pay for the empire anymore. We're seeing the same thing here. These are not accidents, by the way. This is Reaganism worked and continues to work exactly the way it was designed. Exactly the way it was designed. It was designed to make paupers of the 99% and to fully enrich the 1%. And they have used faith, they have used hate, they have used racism, they have used class warfare, they have used immigration, they have used war and the threat of terrorism and everything they can think of to keep that going. This next election, actually, instead of just saying it, let me ask Tom the question. First off, let me ask you, would you mind if we took calls?
Go ahead.
Let me ask you a question as I get the phone number up and running. I think the key to this the key question that this country has to ask itself in the election cycle ending November 5th, because now this is the end of a cycle with mail-in balloting. It's not just election day. It's really the last day of the cycle. I think the question we have to ask ourselves, and I'll ask you, is November 5th simply the next in a series of elections, or is it our last?
That depends on who the winner is. I think, if Trump were to win, you're going to look at them instituting the Insurrection Act of 1807 on day one, which is what the Project 2025 plan from the Heritage Foundation has indicated. They've already been hiring people to replace workers in positions in DOJ, FBI, what have you. And they have, from what I read, about 10,000 people signed up, ready to go. So they've been doing this for the last 6 years. And now you have the congressional committee that just was formed on this because now they're taking it serious. And I wrote to them, I said, "What, are you crazy? You're 6 years too late." Yeah, the horse is out of the damn barn and down and all the way down the freaking next state.
Are we really though? Are we 6 years too late, or are we?
Well, 6 years too late for the 2025 Project 2025. Not
Yeah,
six, we're later than that to the table. But yeah.
Well, okay, all right. That's kind of what I meant. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, so Project 2025 may have only been committed to paper within the last several years, but really, doesn't this go back to the Republican just staunch, universal hate of the New Deal?
Well, there was that. There was a lot of hatred of the New Deal. They were able to push through an amendment to limit the presidential term. Absolutely. But I will
Which
say
they had to do, by the way, because legislation trying to do it would have been unconstitutional.
Right.
Because you cannot have 3 co-equal branches and only term limit one of them.
Right.
The only way to make it constitutional was
an amendment.
part of the Constitution.
Right.
So the phone line is open, 267-227-9189. We only have short time left with Tom, about 15-ish minutes. George and I are going to take you for the final 15 minutes. We have announcements to make, schedules, news about the program, which, by the way, you're welcome to sit there and listen to if you want. It might bore the crap out of you, but you're welcome to stay. So about around 15 more minutes with Tom. Phone lines open, 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. You call in and be part of the program. And I think I realize why nobody has, because I forgot to turn off the do not disturb. I bet you any money I forgot to turn that off. I will do it right now because I'm a goof. Because I forgot, because Google Voice has this lovely feature, folks, called Do Not Disturb, so that I don't get 700,000 spam marketing calls during the week. Or occasionally somebody's watching the program on a recording and decides to call in, which is fine. I mean, I love it that they're watching, but clearly they're not going to get to me. It's a recording. And occasionally I get really, really lucky and somebody calls it and threatens to kill me. That happens too. So I forgot to turn it off, but I did now. And that, come on, I'm clicking on you. And there is the man himself, Randall. Welcome to the program. Say hi to Tom. Get straight
Hey,
into it,
Tom.
my friend.
Hey, Randall, how you doing?
I'm trying to turn my volume down.
Yeah, you're echoing in the back. I can hear me. There you go. You got it. I think.
Yeah, I got it.
Thank you, sir. It's
Hey.
extremely confusing when I hear it come back through. So thank you for doing that.
Well, you got the time delay, so that's why.
That's
But,
exactly.
so Tom, thank you, number one, thank you for coming on, Jeff Kennedy, the Federal Information Show. It's been incredible listening to you two back and forth for the past 2 hours plus, and I want to thank you for bringing up things that I brought up in the chat on that other side of information Facebook group, and that is that you brought up Citizens United, which, in my opinion, until that Supreme Court decision is made and reversed by a future Supreme Court, we won't have real change in this country. And wealth distribution to the top 1% will continue as long as they have that, billions and billions of dollars to buy politicians, not just in the Republican Party, but too many in the Democratic Party
Too many.
and U.S. Congress.
I would agree with you.
And you didn't get to talk, or you didn't hear everyone talk about automation is bad enough for doing away with jobs. But when you throw in the real boogeyman of AI, it's possible there won't be any jobs for humans.
Well, yeah, and that is part of the automation, but yes.
It's possible they have robot doctors, they have robot nurses. It's possible. And I'm going down the list. Robot trash collectors. We even talk about universal basic income. And, I haven't heard that discussion tonight. And how that can save us humans in this country from being totally in poverty. But anyway, I'm not going to hold up. Hopefully somebody else will call in, Jeff.
And you did mention that in the chat. Universal basic income has succeeded everywhere it has been implemented and experimented with. It has been a success. The Republican line against UBI is that people will sit home, they won't work, they'll just collect money and sit around and eat bonbons. And do people still eat bonbons? And sit around and eat bonbons and all that fun stuff. When in fact, what it has shown is that people use the money to pay bills, they use the money for groceries, they use it for healthcare. Some folks even save it and use it to purchase a home, which is the very traditional American way of building wealth, and building wealth that can be passed down is home ownership. You buy in your 20s and 30s at a lower price, you sell in your 60s or 70s at a higher market value, and you take that money and you go somewhere and you retire. So yeah, that you are right. And Citizens United is the bane of our existence. It is I would direct people to www.movetoamend.org, all one word, movetoamend.org. You can sign the petition for a constitutional amendment that declares that money is not speech and corporations are not people. Because, by the way, you cannot have, the Supreme Court is a wholly owned subsidiary at this point. There is no legal. And by the way, I would say the Obama administration and the solicitor did a dreadful job arguing this case, and I'm no lawyer, because this is so fundamental and basic. If we all have guaranteed free speech under the Constitution, then it goes without saying that that speech is then equal, except that money is not distributed equally. Therefore, money cannot be speech. because no one can have more speech than someone else, because it is a universal and constitutional right. And that argument alone should have been enough to have that case thrown out, except that the rich, the 1%, with their employee Mitch McConnell, has shoved so many of these bought and paid for judges in place that they now, all they have to do is find a regular person to be the name of these cases, and the Koch network will pay for them all the way up to the Supreme Court, where they know they will get what they're looking for. In fact, I was stunned on Friday when the Supreme Court upheld the Biden administration's foreign tax rate, where they can where the Biden administration can now tax foreign income for domestic people here domestically who make income overseas. And the Supreme Court actually upheld that. I was gobsmacked by it. Absolutely gobsmacked. And who, by the way, that was a 7-2 decision. And who were the two dissenters? Alito and Thomas. It's sick stuff. Go ahead, Randall, minute or two more if you got anything else quick.
Yeah, Tom.
Yes.
Oh God. Yeah, brain. Right, Jeff?
Rock yourself. It's what I got to do. I can make it work. I could do this occasionally, rattle it around.
Listen, you don't have much time. Tom, thank you, number one, for coming on the show again. And Jeff, I'll talk to you next week. God bless you.
You're the best, my friend. Thank you so much.
Randall, thank you.
And Tom, I should tell you, Randall has been a committee person in a Democratic committee person in Delaware County for, he's gonna get me in the chat because I'm gonna get the number, 40 something years. Precinct committee person and county person. He's run for county commissioner, I think his municipal township council as well. And he's our favorite. He's what we call our resident favorite hippie, and he's happy to wear that title because he was a hippie. But he's been a member of the party
He's
for a very
involved,
long
and
time.
that's important.
How important is it to be active?
It's extremely important. I think that, frankly, if you're not active, then you're belly aching about something you have no idea what you're talking about. I'm the inspector of elections for my precinct. I was a committee person for city and the county Democratic Party. And I've been, like I said before, I've been involved in politics, for better part of 40 years. But I know what I'm talking about when I say that, there used to be an ability for people to work across the aisle, right? People that see politics today don't understand how that could be possible. But it was, they would have their fights on camera, but then they'd go behind closed doors, shaking hands and working deals for the betterment of the country. That doesn't happen anymore.
But when I speak to legislators, and I just spoke to a legislator from here in the Valley last week, that when you're behind closed doors, you're at the state capitol, maybe you're at the legislative cafeteria or whatever they call it, and you see one of these, real MAGA right wingers. Do you ask them, do you really believe that bullshit? Or is it just what
they won't even talk to you?
And this legislator told me it depends on which one. There's a couple real hardcore, true believers. They think no pun intended, they think they're really on the right side of things. And then there's a larger handful that go, we know it's all shit, but it's what we've been paid for. That's how we keep the campaign cash coming in.
That's right.
And they think they're going to be part of it at the end. They think, one of the very underreported, this, I know you know this, one of the very underreported stories ever is that when Paul Ryan, former Speaker of the House, the man who helped Trump push through his only legislative accomplishment, which was an $8 trillion tax cut to the top 1% and the biggest corporations, When he announced that he was leaving Congress, Koch brothers literally handed him $1 million check and said thanks.
Yep.
And they did it openly and publicly.
Yes,
It was still barely covered by our media. They handed him a check.
yes.
Thanks for everything.
And there's
The
no
greatest
shame in it.
investment in this country is, you know, some people will ask, why do the Kochs spend billions and billions of dollars on all this stuff? Because they're getting trillions back.
Exactly.
It's a great investment.
Yep, and it's that's what I said. It's going to continue. Look, the legislature wrote ethics laws that don't even apply to them. They wrote ethics laws for the executive branch, and they're excluded. And it's crazy. It's crazy. Same with you mentioned Clarence Thomas and Alito. I mean, we all know that's been in the news a lot lately about the amount of kickbacks, trips or whatever, they're collecting. These guys should be, kicked off the damn court. There should be a way other than
Impeachment.
Other than impeachment. I mean, there should be ethics violation. There should be ethics in there, and that they're removed for ethic violation.
But
period.
you talked about this earlier. In the flag story, the Alito flag story, him having the insurrectionist flag up at his shore house. I think a lot of America missed the point about that story. Because it would seem to me, since we're all from Jersey, the real thrust of that story is, how did a Supreme Court justice get a multi-million-dollar beachfront house? Certainly not just from his judicial salary.
Right.
You and I know where that house is.
Yes.
And we know roughly from living and growing up in New Jersey how much it costs. It's probably a $4 million house.
Oh, I'd say at least.
And that's just the shore house.
Yes.
That's not the primary residence, which I believe very well could be wrong, is in Princeton. And Princeton is not exactly downtown Patterson.
No, it's not cheap. Nope.
So, we all kind of went nuts about the flag.
Yeah, but the bigger
We
story
kind of
was
glossed
lost.
over the fact of the $4 million shore house.
Right. And and I don't think you're going to see a lot of news, mainstream news media, mainstream media picking this stuff up because, frankly, Trump dominates the airways because it's good clickbait for them, and that's what it's all about now. The news media has stopped being journalists long ago, and Nixon was right. When he said it was the free speech and the news, that killed him, and that if the Republicans wanted to win elections, they needed to take care of the news media, and they started buying them up, and that's what you have now. You have a media that is at best.
And Nixon was no saint. We all know that. He
Right.
was no saint. His campaign deliberately sabotaged the peace talks of the Vietnam War. There's recording of, President Johnson talking to Senator Everett Dirksen, telling him that this was treason. And Dirksen saying, yeah, I know.
Yep.
And the Southern strategy and the war on drugs, there's Haldeman's quote that, we couldn't criminalize being against the war, but we could criminalize drugs. So we did, and we jailed them all. And, the lack of, that's when the cutoff to money of institutions of higher learning started, because Nixon didn't like the damn kids out there, protesting against him. But there is a story that, and most people know, by the way, that it was during the 68 campaign that Roger Ailes was working at a TV station. No, sorry, the 60 cam. No, it was 68. It was 68. It was working at a TV station when Nixon had come to do an interview. Ailes was in his 20s then, or might have been early 30s, but I think it was still late 20s. and walked right into the green room where Nixon was and said, "You lost the election in 60 because you didn't know how to do TV." And Nixon brought him in and put him in charge of all the media for the campaign. And it was Ailes that brought the idea of Fox News to Nixon when he was in the White House. And he wanted to call it GOP TV. In this new emerging technology called cable TV. And it was going to be GOP TV that was wholly owned, bought, and paid for by the Republican Party. And he told Nixon exactly what he wanted to do. And even Nixon said, "That's too far. I can't be part of that. It's going to be too divisive. It's going to tear the country apart. And I won't be part of it." And so here comes Rupert Murdoch, who's destroyed democracies now on 3 continents, who's done it here, and did it in Australia first, the UK with Sky News second, and now here. And it should say something to people that even Nixon said, "That's too much."
Yep. But that's what I'm saying. There was a time in our society when even the other side had a conscience. That's gone now. That's gone.
In a quick minute or two, which is unfair, what makes you hopeful?
Ooh. The frankly rise in unions. It's slight right now. The rise in unions and the slight rise in or the starting of the turnaround on the pensions. I think those two things will can actually bring people out of the poverty or the low paying jobs. Once, right now, a union worker gets paid 13.5% more than a non-union worker doing the same work. That's the most current data from BLS. And women fare better by 9.5%. Comparing the two, right? Racial disparities are less. The racial black men and women get paid more in unionized workforces than in non-union workforces in a big way. Same with Hispanics. You're talking double digits in both of those cases, right? So I think as people see that and they hear more about it and they see people, going round and round with this stuff, I think it's going to help. And I think ultimately, as the union strength increases, you're going to see, more of a push to get people responsive. Now, the only thing that I see as a drawback is that the Democrats have to remember where their roots are because they abandoned unions and you see where they're at now. I mean, they're struggling. So had they stayed, the course, it would have been all right. But
I always make the argument that I'm very proud to be an elected member of the state committee here from Northampton, and I'm the vice chair of the Progressive Caucus for our state. That progressives we're not the radical ones. We didn't drop down here from Mars with some new philosophy. We are the basis of the party. We are the foundation of the party. Workers, healthcare, education, unions, fair wages, equality, justice. We are the foundation of the party. The party took a right turn, no pun intended, in the 90s when the Clinton group that had to go suck up to insurance companies for donations because the unions had been decimated. And then, of course, did what the insurance companies wanted in return. That was the hard right turn of our party. We, the progressives, are not the insurgents here. It was our party first. And we can still have a big tent. We can still disagree within this larger framework, but we're the basis of the party.
that's where I think the messaging gets a little screwy. The fact that we do have a big tent means we have a lot of voices, and it's difficult to come out with one message when you have, the inclusion of many voices. And Republicans, on the other hand, their tent is closed, and this is the message, and that's why they're very effective with their message. They don't have that big tent.
Are you hopeful at all? I take a bit of hope from the youth vote. The fact that it was so large in 2022, and the fact that there is this group of 18 continual new voters who have never known a country other than a Reagan country, other than trickle down austerity, tax cuts for the rich, demonize and damn the poor, is fake corporate Christianity, the rise of racism, scapegoating of people of color. And yet somehow they have been able to take a step back and say, none of this isn't right. None of this is right.
Right.
Do you take any
That's
hope
hopeful.
in that?
Yes, I do. That's very hopeful. And it's really I mentioned my website before, the nuclearpolitics.com. I get into a lot of different articles on there, and some of it has to do with exactly what you're talking about. I do believe that there is a glimmer of hope for the youth coming up. The problem is getting the message to them. And yes, they do see what they see on TV. They do feel the pains of existence. They see what their parents are going through, perhaps. But I think putting it needs to be messaged properly to them so they understand, so they have the context under which all this is going on. And that's the important thing, is the context. And that, I think, is missing because you don't have journalists anymore in the news putting together a piece and putting it in context.
I am deeply, deeply grateful for you doing this, and especially spending so much time here. That's beyond, above and beyond the call. And please know that you are always, always welcome here.
Sure. Thank you.
You're part of our program family now. So we will call on you again. And I miss you at county events. I wish you would come back and I would be able to see you at all these things again. But just please know that you're always welcome here, and hope that you will come and join us again. And it doesn't have to be for 3 hours this time, but I hope that you will come back and see us again and share your knowledge. And especially with the debate coming up next week, and as we continue to move through this incredibly, incredibly vital election cycle, you are always welcome here. And please come back and see us. And I simply don't have enough words to say thank you for all the time that you've given us tonight.
No thanks necessary. I enjoyed being here. So thank you.
Well, please come back again. Thanks again. And I hope I see you soon.
Okay. Take care.
George, we have some news in the final 4 minutes that we have. I teased you a little bit last week, or not last week, 2 weeks ago, that the program would be expanded. And it will. Starting the week of July 1st. And that July 1st is a Monday. It's obviously the week of July 4th, but Monday, July 1st. Barring anything unforeseen, barring some huge technical mishap, which George will, of course, will make sure doesn't happen. The Kennedy Effect will now come to you 5 nights a week from 8 p.m. Eastern Time for a whopping 1 hour. We will be with you 5 nights a week from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on a brand new radio outlet. The show will look very much the way it does now, will sound very much the way it does now. George will be here with me. It would not be the Kennedy Effect without him. We hope to still have guests. We will still take your phone calls. It'll be very much the show that you're used to. It'll just be a hell of a lot shorter and quicker, and maybe I'll shut up more. But we will be part of a brand new broadcasting outlet starting July 1st. We will still be with you on Sundays here on Hot 101. So you will actually have a chance to catch us 6 nights a week. It's going to be a lot, but we'll hang in there and we'll do it as long as we can. 101 has been awesome to me, and that's why I won't walk away from it. I am starting something new. You will find us at a new place, and I'll give you more details about where that will be coming up. It would be unfair for me to plug a whole new station on this station. But after we click off of 101 and hand it over to the Villains View, I'll stay here with you on Facebook for a couple of minutes. So I will still be part of Hot 101 as long as they will keep me. But we will be expanding. Our weeknight program will be on a completely new global internet and video radio station. I know video radio doesn't sound like it goes together, but very much like we do now, you'll be able to watch our program and you'll be able to listen to the audio of our program. So starting July 1st, a brand new radio station is born that I am a part of. And I'm very proud and, to be honest, very nervous because it's a big, big step. So we will be on that radio station 5 nights a week. That's the plan. 5 nights a week from 8 to 9 p.m. Thomas McCormick, the villain, Sergeant Mac will be there as well. And then on Sundays, we will be right back here on hot101.net. So with that being said, we are into our last minute for everybody at TCP, Taekwon, Andrew, Marquise, and Whitney, for everybody at hot101.net, including the big boss, DJ Lex, DJ Earl, Waterboy, Chino, everybody at Hot 101. For everybody associated with the Kennedy Effect, Lynn and George Dare, of course, April Riddick, who we would not be here without her, for Kristen, Daisy the dog, and Guy the cat downstairs. I'm Jeff Kennedy. We've done all the damage we can do for 1 week. We will see you next week. That would be 23 and 7 would be June 30. And the Villain's View starts right now. So we have left Hot 101. We stay with you on Facebook for just a minute or two. A brand new radio station launches July 1st. GCPR Productions, GCPR Radio, Ghost Claw Productions Radio. George and I are starting a brand new radio outlet with Sergeant Mac, with Thomas McCormick, the villain of the Villain's View, who is live right now, by the way, on Hot 101. And our program will be 5 nights a week from 8 to 9 p.m. And that is slated to start on July 1st. So July 1st, Monday, July 1st at 8 p.m. Eastern. Did I say 8? I think I might have said a.m. just 30 seconds ago. Wrong. p.m. p.m. George is supposed to be correcting me of these things. So from
I thought you were doing 8
did I
a.m.
say a.m.?
No, I
did
thought you were doing. No, I thought you were
No,
doing the
Thomas
morning.
is doing that. I have to work.
Oh, Tom's is doing the morning.
Yeah, I have to work for a living.
Okay.
Believe me, I would much rather do mornings. Oh my God. I'd rather be doing mornings.
Okay.
I'd rather be doing 9 to noon. Trust me. Sleep till about 6:30, 7 o'clock, do a quick 9 to noon, 5 days a week, and then go do something else, go to the gym or whatever. I don't know. But Thomas will be with you in the mornings. I will be with you at night because I work during the day. So GCPR radio launches July 1st, Monday, July 1st at 9 a.m. in the morning with the villains. I shouldn't say the Villain's View, but with the original villain himself, Thomas McCormick.
The Sound
Sorry,
of Coffee,
Mac.
I believe.
Yeah, well, I wasn't getting there, but we'll get to
All right.
that.
Well, all right. Well,
Go to the website. I'll put the website in the chat, or George will. Somebody will put the website in the chat.
I'll
Check it out.
put it in there.
And learn about where we're going. Not the chat here, by the way, on Facebook is what I meant. Hopefully I can put the link in there.
I'll do it.
Go check it out. Check out the website. The radio station launches July 1st. Kennedy Effect will be with you in addition to many other shows, diverse voices. Every voice will matter. Everyone will be heard. And the Kennedy Effect will turn into something called TKE Tonight. The Kennedy Effect Tonight. And George and I will be with you every weeknight. Again, barring anything unforeseen. Every weeknight from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. starting Monday, July 1st. And for Hot 101 folks who might still be in the 101 group and page watching, we're going to still be with you as well on Sundays. 101 on Sundays, GCPR starting July 1st from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. And we hope you'll be a part of it. Please go to the website to try to put it in.
Already did.
Oh, did you?
Yep.
You did, really?
Yep.
Where?
I put it in the chat, actually.
You did?
Thought I did.
See it.
Okay.
Oh, goodness. Am I going to have to do it?
No, I did it.
I don't see it, man.
I
Copy.
put it in the bloody chat. Wait, let me see.
Did-
View more comments.
I think I
Yeah, it's in there.
paste, you naughty thing.
I pasted it.
So check it out. I put the link in the comments section of the show. Check it out.
Alright.
And I meant what I said. 101 has been tremendous to us. It gave us a chance to introduce what we do to global internet radio. And we probably would not still be here without them. And we will still be a part of them. We'll still be with you on Sundays at 6 p.m. Eastern. We will still be part of the Hot101.net family. GCPR begins July 1st. That will be our weeknight show. TKE Tonight, the Kennedy Effect Tonight starts July 1st, 8 p.m. The station officially begins at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on July 1st with Sergeant Mac. So GCPR is born July 1st. We've been working on this since before Christmas, I think, George?
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, I think since before Christmas. So we've been working on this for a long time. Probably when the first not rumor, when we first started discussing this, probably goes back over a year that we've been working on this. But now, it's really red alert time, and we're in hyper mode.
Our
Because
first
we
production meeting, I believe,
Yeah.
was January. I have all those
I
meetings
think
saved.
so, yeah. Because
Yeah,
we
we're
launched
January.
we launch a week from tomorrow.
We've been meeting every
So-
Saturday since. We've been
Yep.
getting stuff done. And we will be ready.
So for our program, if you're a loyal listener or watcher to our program, you might not see too terribly different from what you see now. It'll just be shorter, a little more fast paced, a little quicker. We'll take the big story of the day or big stories of the day and bring them to you and break it down. And then on Sundays, we'll have our longer, deeper conversation with you. But so we'll still be with 101, and then GCPR launches on July 1st. So we hope you'll check it out. I did put the link in the comments section of the show. It is my sincere hope that you will check out the link, check out the website, and learn about what it is that we're doing and trying to do. So don't worry, 101, we're still here and plan to continue to be here as long as you'll have us. And this new venture begins on July 1st. So here comes our second sign off for the night. So we signed off to 101. Sergeant Mac is on 101 right now. Here's our second sign off of the night. And that is to simply say, I think we've done all the damage that we can do for one night. Today's the 23rd, 23 and 7 is the 30th. Our plan, again, barring anything unforeseen, work schedules, health, technical problems, whatever. Our plan is to be with you again next week, July 30th. It'll literally be a day before we launch. So maybe talk about that. It's a little awkward, to be honest, talking about a new venture on another radio station. But since we're going to do both, we'll try to talk to you a little bit about both and still be respectful to both, because that's extremely important as well. We want to stay respectful as well. So unless you have anything, George, that you want to share with the folks, I say we say good night, because I have to go to work tomorrow.
Happy birthday, that's all.
Yeah.
Or happy belated birthday, I should say.
So Randall keeps telling me he's not seeing the link in a chat. It's there. I know it's there. Because no, I don't want to pin it. Wait, oh, I know how I can do it. I know. Because I didn't.
Well,
pay-
Ghost Claw, oh, wait.
No, I
Sergeant Mac Show is
copied
actually in, is actually,
no. I
on that
copied
other
the
side of
link.
information.
I copied the link of the website to
Oh,
and put it that's what I was talking about.
oh,
And I got it to the boss. So Randall should have.
okay.
So there's that. Anyway, so
I
that was
typed
an
it in.
awkward ending, but that was a very unprofessional ending. But there you go. That's all the damage we can do for next week. We will plan. We have every plan in the world to see you next week. The reason I keep saying that is because things happen. My health takes a powder. George can't be here. We end up with a technical problem. I get called to work, or we plan to take a trip somewhere. We can't get back in time. Things happen. Life happens. But I am planning, and I do mean this. I mean, next week's the 30th. I don't see anything on the horizon until like Labor Day that we wouldn't be with you. Now, I know last summer I got really burnt out and we took like a 6-week break. And I'm not saying that might not happen again. But it's not the plan. The plan is to be here with you pretty much every week until Labor Day weekend. And then Labor Day is when, election season really, really, really kicks into high gear. So watch the presidential debate this week. Do yourselves a favor and do that. Watch the presidential debate. It's important. It's really, really important. It's not hard to be informed. It doesn't take a heck of a lot of time, but you need to be informed and you need to vote. So until next week, we've done all the damage we can do. Please have a great week for everybody associated with the Kennedy effect. We will see you on the 30th from 6 p.m. Stay cool if you're here in the Northeast. Take care of yourselves and each other. We will see you next week.